Folks, welcome back to Bru Time. This week we're chatting to Charlie Reynolds, otherwise known as Be More Charlie, isn't it? Be More Charles.
More Charles, yeah.
Be More Charles, my apologies, otherwise known as Be More Charles on Instagram.
How dare you?
I know, I'm so sorry. It's not like I've been organising this for the last 4 weeks or whatever it is. But you're also going to be coming to YouTube soon as well, aren't you? So we'll be chatting about that during this chat.
Yes.
Right. Well, you're on YouTube now. I know you are because I've subbed already. But you're going to be building the YouTube channel.
Yeah, that's part of the plan, I guess. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yes.
Good. Right then, Charlie. First off, you've got a little tipple of choice. You got a wee can of Coke or bottle of Coke going on the rounds there. I've got a can of beer. Slan, cheers to your health. Welcome to Bru Time.
Salud.
So, what's the story? Where are you? How'd you get there? What you doing? Go.
Oh, well, okay. So I'm currently in Lima, in Peru. I arrived here on a motorbike, CRF 250 Rally. And I originally left to get here from the west coast of Canada, British Columbia. So it's taken me about I actually left in October 2023, end of October 2023. And I've been on the road for most of that time. I did go back to Canada for 3 months because I was hit by a truck in Costa Rica. So that, combined with a friend's wedding, combined with my Canadian permanent residency, it made sense to take a bit of a break from the trip halfway. Yeah. So I did go back to Canada for a few months, and then I sort of returned to the road, which was quite nice actually, because I had a much better idea of how to do the trip once I came back. And it was really nice to refresh my gear and my setup and just refine all the systems that I'm using to travel. So that was cool.
I had a similar experience on my trip. I ended up back in the UK for a little bit, and I often think now that probably did me a favour because it was extenuating circumstances meant I had to cut my trip short and return home, and potentially that was it over, but the stars aligned and I got to be back on the road. But that break in my trip not only allowed me to do the things that you were talking about, but also it almost it further steeled the resolve, because now I was like, right, I've had a taste of this dream being taken away. That's never happening again. So it's just like, right, we're making this happen now. So it was just, there was no other there was no other option anymore. We're doing it. We're getting it done. But that was my experience. So how did you get to this point? Like, what? I mean, you're not from Canada. I take it you're a UK citizen originally.
Yeah, I'm a UK citizen. I guess I started trying to do the UK thing with my adult life. So I moved to London and I worked in the city. I lived with some great friends, and that was a really nice time. You know, in your early 20s, living in a big city with your friends that's awesome. I think it dawned on me that I was going on a series of adventures. And these were holidays. These were whatever I could get off work. And they sort of, I would say my ambition was escalating, but the adventures they weren't quite getting to the trajectory I wanted. You know, I wanted to buy a school bus and convert it and drive long distances. And the adventures I was going on were really cool. It was things like we would buy a Volkswagen Golf on eBay, and we'd spray paint it a convertible Golf, and then we'd drive it across Europe as far as we could in 2 weeks. Or we flew to Croatia, and we cycled from the southernmost point of Croatia along the coast to the north, sort of doing boys things on the way. And these were amazing adventures for me because they were a lot more challenging than a regular holiday. And that provided me with a bit of an escape from the monotony of living in a big city and just playing what I consider to be quite a monotonous role in society that way. So I think at some point there was a winter in 2017, 2018, where I went skiing. I went on 7 ski trips in one winter. And I think I spent almost 40 days on the mountain.
Right.
And I just thought, this is ridiculous. It made much more sense
Oh, I think your internet's dying, Charlie.
And so I moved
you're back.
with my best friend Fraser. I'm back.
Yeah, you're back now. You've come back now. You broke. You moved in with your best mate Fraser.
So I moved with my best mate Fraser. We moved to Whistler in British Columbia, which is a big ski resort, bike resort.
Nice.
It's like Disneyland. Yeah, it's a really cool place. And I've been living there for, I guess it would be 6 years, but less than that with my trip now. And yeah, that changed my life in a big way because my life became centric around these adventures. And you can still make your contribution to society, and you still have to have a job and you still have to pay rent. But it was much more of a focus on recreation and outdoor activities. So I got really into camping. I got really into messing around in my 4x4. Went on lots of adventures across the west coast of Canada, Vancouver Island, down into the US, doing some of the BDRs in the US, but in a Land Cruiser Prado 4x4.
What's BDR mean?
Oh, the backcountry discovery routes. So if you go on ridebdr.com,
Gotcha.
So yeah, I started off doing a few of those, and I thought, this is amazing. I want to do all of them. But I still was hooked on cars. Always have been hooked on cars. And I got to a situation in my life, I was dating a girl, and that came to its natural conclusion. I had, I guess, a bit of an experience with a new perspective, let's call it, on death, through her father becoming sick and dying while we were together, which was very sad. And I decided that I wanted to drive to the bottom of South America. I'd always wanted to do it in a 4x4. I'd follow lots of people on Instagram who were doing that. And it just looked like amazing scenery, amazing places. And, stuff can go wrong, like big adventure. And big adventure is really what I was missing from my life. And I think I had this new lens on my life that just for whatever reason said, you have to go right now. And I was sort of sat there in a little bit of an in-between phase, thinking about where to go with life. I should mention that I've had a spotty experience with work permits in Canada. So work has not been regular. I've not always been able to get work. So that's been tricky for me. And I was in one of those periods where I didn't have a work permit at this time. And I thought to myself, if you just sell everything you have now, as opposed to planning for this trip in the future, you could afford to go on this trip on a motorbike. And I had bought this motorbike, CRF 250 Rally, just for going on adventures. And so I put all the money into the bike and the license, and I ended up passing the license about a month before I left. And I think until I passed that license, I really didn't think that I was going to go through with this plan. It just didn't seem real or feasible or like something I could do. As soon as they told me I had a license, I remember turning around to the instructor and I said, "Thanks for passing me. I'm going to ride to Argentina." And he was like, "Oh, wow." Yeah, he said, "When?" And I was like, "Oh, on the 15th, I'm going to leave." And he looked at me.
This?
Yeah. So it was just under a month away, I think.
Yeah.
And he looked at me, and I think there was a part of him that was like, "I regret passing you." It was like you should have been held back a few years.
This week, as usual, we are sponsored by Ultimate Add-ons. Now, Ultimate Add-ons are the premium manufacturer of mobile phone and action camera mounting solutions for motorcycles. With a kit for any bike and a proven track record of creating products that keep your devices safe, secure, and easily accessible, the Ultimate Add-ons product range is ideal for any rider from the commuter to the round-the-world adventurer. Why shell out on an expensive GPS system when you could use your smartphone, keeping it charged and within reach to take photos of your travels at the same time? Ultimate Add-ons waterproof, shockproof and dustproof tough cases are available for all flagship smartphone models and are designed by riders for riders. Find out why Ride Magazine gives Ultimate Add-ons their coveted Best Buy certification. Keep riding this winter with Ultimate Add-ons. It's all about the journey. Now, folks, if you head to ultimateaddons.com, use the code TeapotOne with the number 10, so that's Teapot with O-N-E, then the number 10, you'll get 10% off their entire range. A massive thank you to Ultimate Add-ons for their continued support.
it's a really interesting experience because I think every time you get into a new activity, you sort of get schooled, don't you? And I got schooled really fast and really well in terms of like the type of gear you need, the type of attitude you have to have. It's been an amazing experience.
I was in exactly the same boat. You know, it was a massive personal event that gave me the impulse to do my trip. And I've had so many people on here who've done world adventures, big cross-continent or multi-continent adventures. I've had people that have rode the Atlantic, people that have cycled the world, all sorts. Everybody, almost everybody actually, to a person, they all seem to have this like pivotal, influential moment. Something has happened in their life that's kickstarted them along. And so many times, sadly, but in a way, it's kind of nice. It's death or loss. It makes people just go, do you know what? I need to do this now because we're not here forever, are we? You know, and our time is finite. So let's crack on.
And this week, we're also supported by the Influencer Store. The Influencer Store helps you build your brand, big or small, providing you with a solution and apparel. We help you to increase your fan base while supporting you with starting your own influencer clothing line with nothing more than just an idea or design. And there are no hidden costs. For more info, come check us out at theinfluencerstore.co.uk or drop us an email at online@influencerstore.co.uk for more information. Now, if you've ever bought any TeapotOne or any of the Bru Time merch, available over at TeapotOne.com, then you'll have an idea of the sort of quality we're talking about. That's the reason I went with the Influencer Store. They're a British company, family run, and they pride themselves on the quality of the products. I've used some of the online print-on-demand type stuff, and to be honest with you, 2 or 3 washes and T-shirts, they're all out of shape, the colours fade. My stuff with the Influencer Store, this thing's 2 or 3 years old, I wear it constantly, and it's still doing fine. So a massive thank you to Roger and Charlotte and family over at the Influencer Store.
Let's crack on. What was your event?
Sadly, my mum had fought cancer for like 10 odd years, and then in her last sort of year of life, it was pretty evident she wasn't responding to the chemo. She'd had like the all clear 3 times in that time, and every time the cancer came back, she'd go through chemo, and it would seem to put it into remission again. But this last time, it just wasn't working, and we were just chatting away, spending a lot of time. She was living with me by this point, and we just spent a lot of time chatting. And Long Way Round came on the TV, you know, and I was watching it, and my mum had bought me the box set for Christmas years before, like back in 2004, whenever it was that they did it. And I just started to moan, you know, and say, oh, it's all right for them, Hollywood celebs, all that money, blah, 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 blah. And my mum just turned around, she said, look, you've always spoke about riding a bike and you've never done it. You've always spoke about travel and you've never done it. Don't get to my stage where you're near the end and you regret what you've not done, you know. For what we know, you've got one chance at this. So look after those that you love, but live your life. And it was literally one of those moments, like a flash, you know, a thunderbolt flash, literally just boom, light bulb in my head. Yeah. And I was like, fuck it, I'm going to do it. And I went online there and then and found out how do you get a motorbike license, booked my DAS, job done. Passed my bike test, and by that point, Mum was in a hospice, like last stages of life. And, you know, I shook the keys to my new bike. I rode my brand new J6R 600 that I'd just picked up after passing my test. Rode that to the hospice, walked in, shook the keys and said, I've done it, I've passed my test. And she just said, right, well, promise me you'll do this trip. So I did, and 5 days later, she passed away. So it was like, right, okay, we've got to make this happen.
You had to at that point.
Yeah, definitely. But I think I say this to so many people, and I'm sure you will think this as well. You'll share this. People say to me, you know, what's the hardest part of travel? In fact, we'll probably have somebody asking that question at some point this evening. Everyone asks, what's the hardest part? And I always say to people, leaving. Leaving is the hardest part. Making that break from your norm to the unknown. If you've never done something like this before, I was shitting myself. I don't know about you. How were you when you first left?
Totally, yeah. So first of all, there's the reaction of everyone that you tell what you're about to do, and they all go, fucking hell, mate, that sounds super dangerous. I remember my dad my dad was, I don't think he heard me the first time I told him. I said, "Oh, Dad, I'm going to ride my bike to Ushuaia." And he went, "Okay, yeah." And then the next time we spoke, he said, "Oh, what are you up to this week?" And I said, "I'm leaving this week." And he goes, "Where are you going?" And I said, "I'm riding to Argentina." And he was like, "Where is it?" And then I remember the moment he put it into Google on the phone, he was like, "Charlie," he was like, that's really dangerous, you know. And everyone's reaction is different.
Yeah.
But a lot of people, it's especially if they don't know someone who's done it or they don't follow people online who've done it before. It's it's a new concept, and it's not something that comes easy to everyone. So that was one aspect of it. I think for me, the moment that it sort of set in was the first night camping. First night camping, which was like my third night on the road. I was in a tent in Oregon, and the rain was coming down so hard. I remember the floor of the tent getting completely flooded. And I remember just lying there on my own and thinking, like, what on earth have you done?
Yeah.
You're going to be
Whose
doing
idea was this?
Yeah, you're going to be doing this for the next 6 months. Like, why have you decided to do this? And, you know, the naivety of it is that there's no way that I would have completed the trip in 6 months. So yeah, it was quite an isolating moment, but it was shortly followed by like quite a euphoric moment in the Nevada desert a couple of days later, where I realized like the scale of the freedom and the experience that I was about to have. So yeah, it's a double-edged sword. But you're right, absolutely. The hardest part is packing all your stuff up, saying goodbye, leaving the system of society, and hitting the road.
That's it. It's making that break, isn't it? From your known, from your like your sort of ground zero of you, like, you know what your normal life is, don't you? You know what day to day is. You know who to call if this happens, where to go if that happens. It's all sussed, isn't it? But when you're looking at the unknown, it's like, shit, what do I do if I break down? What do I do if I don't know, if I run out of money, or what do I do if this happens, that happens? But you quickly just, I'm sure you strike me as the type of person that adopts the same attitude I did, that it was just, you deal with it when it happens, don't you? It's just, that's overland travel. See what happens, off we go.
Yeah. I like to say you burn that bridge when you come to it.
Absolutely. You're talking about, you know, like,
which doesn't make sense, of course.
I've just seen some of the bridges you've just crossed, actually. You just, on folks, you need to have a look at Charlie's Instagram, Be More Charles. Have a look at that. There's it seems to be what the kids are doing these days. Everyone seems to be doing it on Instagram at the moment, or TikTok. Obviously, it's short form content. So it is, I'm not going to say easier, because it's still a real art and skill to create the content that you are creating. But it's not taking days of editing. It's more a case of a couple of hours of editing, I'm imagine. I don't do that style that you do, the short form reels, the way that you do them. But I'm imagining that's a good couple of hours of editing to get that. I mean, I could be wrong, could be 5 minutes, I don't know. But the long form stuff that certainly I did on my trip, and I do now on the main YouTube channel, I mean, it takes me bloody days to do that. Absolutely days. So it'll be interesting to see how you find that moving across onto the YouTube platform, long form content as well. Yeah,
I think the pressure with the short form content is that you're dealing with someone who is being shown your content. They don't know who you are, and the average attention span is 3 seconds, right? So I think a lot of the science of the short form is that you're telling a story in a very short period of time. So you'd be surprised how much work has to go into a successful video, in terms of not just filming it, but scripting it and editing it to keep people entertained. I find it really fun. It's a bit of a science. I actually think that it'd be great training for the longer form, and I hope that actually per minute of video edited, it'll be a lot quicker to edit YouTube. I'm looking forward to the challenge.
Yeah, be interesting to see. Yeah, it's weird. You seem to.
Bruce, is this super loud?
What?
There's a kid being loud there. I'm just wondering if it's super loud.
There was a tiny little bit of background noise at some point over the last couple of minutes, but it wasn't horrendous. I'll be able to normalize some audio, and there's quite a bit of background echo reverb as well because a big open space. You've not got a mic, but I should be able to take that out to an extent. We should be all right, mate. Okay. We'll be all right.
Okay. I will speak clearly like this.
Yes. What?
I was just checking in case it was spoiling things.
No problem. No worries. Just that. Yeah. It's weird. YouTube was going that way for a while, where it was all about retention editing. You know, the Mr. Beast impact. That's the way everything was going. But it definitely seems to be moving back to longer form and less. I'm not going to say less edited, because it is still highly edited content. But it's, whereas maybe a 10-minute vid could have, a couple of hundred cuts in it on retention editing style, they're now moving to maybe 50 cuts. You know, it's much longer space of periods in between cuts, whereas before it used to be half a second to 3 seconds. You know, very kind of going along the lines of the short form content. That was the Mr. Beast impact, wasn't it? But it seems to be reverting back now to more of a documentary style. People are putting up 40 minutes, an hour, hour and a half, 2 hour sort of films. Yeah, it's crazy how it's going. Be interesting to see if it could go to the other extreme, couldn't it? It could go to like an hour, 2 hour long vids is what people are expecting. Who knows? We'll see. We'll see what happens. Right, so you started off in Whistler, Canada. You're now in Lima, in Peru.
Mm-hmm.
What's your route been so far?
So I skipped pretty quickly through the west coast of the States, just because in terms of cultural difference, it's relatively on par with where I live. It's not the same, but it's, I wanted to experience Spanish-speaking countries. I wanted to get to Mexico. I can explore the west coast of the US. I'm lucky enough to live in the Pacific Northwest. I have a long time to explore that area. So I wanted to crack on. I left at a strange time. I left late October, so it was quite cold. And yeah, I came down through Oregon, Nevada. I did the old Route 66, some of the BDRs as I passed them where there wasn't snow. I came into Mexico. I rode down the Baja Peninsula, which was amazing. Definitely won't be my last time in Baja.
Beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah, so beautiful. And Baja Peninsula, I then took a boat to the mainland, which was interesting. The boat to the mainland broke down for 8 hours in the middle of the Sea of Cortez. Floating in pitch black darkness. Wow. While all of the crew said things like, "This has never happened before," and there were families grabbing life jackets and stuff like. It was hilarious.
Really?
So the engine made a bang and went off, and then the emergency lighting came on, and it was like that for 8 hours, and you couldn't see land. So. And I was sat there like, yes, we're thinking. I'm a bit of a weirdo like that. I really enjoyed the whole situation. But yeah, so I got across to the mainland, spent a little bit of time on the west coast before heading into more mountainous areas of Mexico. Then I sort of looped around Mexico City, went back to the coast. And then you've got more mountains in the south. So across southern Mexico, up around the Yucatan Peninsula. And then I came down into Belize, and then I spent a couple of months in Guatemala. I didn't expect to spend a couple of months in Guatemala. But at this point, I'd sort of come to terms with the fact I wasn't going to make it to Ushuaia in reasonable time. I'll come back to this point in a minute. But I basically had a lot of people telling me that I wasn't going to make the weather window, because the weather window is like December, right? People are arriving now in Ushuaia. December, early Jan. It's not to say it's not possible outside the weather window, but there was a lot of people, just everyone I spoke to, they're like, "What's your timeline?" I'd tell them, they'd go, "You're not in the weather window." And I would say, "Yes, I'm not in the weather window. What's your issue?" Anyway, we'll talk about that in a minute. So I basically decided that it might be best to maybe pause my trip somewhere. I wasn't sure what that would look like. So I slowed down in Central America. Guatemala was amazing. I think you had Nick and Beth on here, didn't you?
No, I've not had them on here, no.
Well, you should. They're a great fan, actually.
Yeah.
Met Nick and Beth in Guatemala, and that kind of situation evolved. And then I went down to El Salvador, Nicaragua, Honduras, spent some time with a friend in Costa Rica, got a chance to explore around there. And then, unfortunately, when I was leaving my friend's house, I was hit by a truck. Yeah, it was a good smack as well. That I was stationary on the road, waiting to turn left in the right-hand lane.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard a screech and a bang like that. And he just saw me just before he hit me and had a chance to hit the brakes, but I got catapulted down the road. It was, the back end of my bike was all bent, the rear subframe and the racks were destroyed. And everything could be welded back together on the racks, but we did have to find a new rear subframe. And I got off really lucky somehow. I hyperextended my elbow, I sprained my wrist, but nothing was broken. So,
wow.
So I hung out by the pool at my friend's house in Costa Rica for a couple of weeks until I could just about ride. I had a wrist brace. And I then basically had to make it across to Panama City, where my bike was going to be stored for this break in the trip that I had then planned. So there's an interesting story to me getting back, actually.
Let's hear it. So we're here for the stories.
You've got to imagine I've been deliberating about whether to go back to Canada for a few weeks in Central America. I'm not sure if it's the right decision. I've got my Canadian permanent residency. That's happening at some point. I'm going to get an email to say you've been invited to apply. And this email, I've been waiting for this email for like 3 years. It's been a really long process. So I'm trying to think about that. I've got my friend's wedding I'm going back for. And there's also this boys' weekend that I really want to go to. Think mountain bikes in an arid mountainous area of BC. About 20, 30 of us go, all in trucks. And we spend the whole weekend there. Yeah. Amazing weekend. Can't be missed. So I'm juggling all this information. And eventually I decide to book a flight. I'm like, look, just commit, book the flight. So I booked the flight and the next day hit by a truck. And my flight leaves from Panama City, so I can't get there now. And a sensible person probably would have just booked a flight out of Costa Rica and scrapped the other flight, but it's not my style. Okay, I'm getting to that flight. So I rest up for 2 weeks, and then I've got a few days to get to the airport. I think I had 4 days. So the first day I ride across the remainder of Costa Rica. I meet up with a friend I met online, and we went to an amazing indigenous community, camped there for the night, kind of close to the border with Panama. And we camped there. Next morning, said goodbye to him. And my plan was to cross the border that day. And I would then cross the border and basically have like 2.5 days to get to Panama City. Anyway, I leave my friend and I pretty quickly get pulled over by a policeman. And I did do something wrong. I overtook a really slow moving truck, but it was on a double yellow. And, I just whizzed around him without even thinking. Lights come on behind me and this policeman pulls me over. And having been in Nicaragua and Honduras for all of this time, you build a bit of a defense system to policemen because they're not policemen there. They're sort of these rogue sharks. Yeah. And so he pulls me over and he says, license and passport. And I'm thinking, now begins the game of chess, right? Yeah. So I say, I'm sorry, I haven't got those things. I was robbed. And he's looking at me and he goes, I've got my GoPro recording as well, because that's a good way to try and keep him honest. Yeah. So anyway, he's chatting to me and he says, hang on a second. And he makes a call and he's typing in my license plate into this big tablet. And he says, this bike's imported temporarily. If you don't have your passport or your driving license, you're not allowed to have the bike on the road. You need to talk to the embassy and get like a temporary permit, because this bike legally needs one of those items. Mm-hmm. And after a little bit of back and forth and another phone call, he decides he's going to confiscate the bike.
Oh.
So at this point, I'm in the middle of nowhere. I'm not sure how this is going to work, but there's physically no way for me to carry all my things. I'm going to need a taxi to a hotel. I'm going to have to wait in that hotel until I can get my bike back. So I'm trying to weasel my way out of this situation, right? And the guy's having none of it. He's a bit of a stick, honestly. And we're chatting. It's been a couple of hours now, so my chance to make it to the border before dark is diminishing. Mm-hmm. And eventually I hear the 7 beeps from the GoPro because it's run out of battery and it stopped recording. And I thought, oh, fuck, that was what was keeping me safe from these corrupt policemen. But then I realized, he's not being corrupt. He's being straight.
He's got to do it by the book because he's on camera, yeah.
Yeah. So then it takes me about 10 minutes to realize this. And he's literally calling the truck company. He's put my details into his system. He said, you can't cross the border now. We're aware of this vehicle being here illegally. We're going to take the vehicle away. And I'm just I'm super stressed. I wasn't playing it cool. I was starting to get a bit upset. Anyway, I realized that now my GoPro's off. Maybe I can try and turn him crooked. Mm-hmm. So I start saying all the right things. I'm saying surely there's a fine that can be paid now that would save you a lot of paperwork and save me a lot of time. And at this point, I'm prepared to pay hundreds of dollars, okay, just to get out of this situation because I've been hit by a truck. I'm trying to make it halfway across Panama with my limp wrist. I just want to go home. Yeah. And I've not got very long to make this journey. So I'm I've got to get out of this situation. This is not good. I've only got 2 days to cross Panama, which is 800 kilometers, because I've been healing. So anyway, after a little bit of back and forth, the guy agrees $100, and he will sort out everything for me.
Wow.
But I don't have the $100 on me. I think a lot of people travel with lots of money. They got some stuff in here, stuff in there. Yeah. I keep one $100 bill, which I keep taped. I won't tell you where it's taped. But I just think the more money I have on me, the more they can get stolen. And as long as I've got $30, you can do most things with $30 in Latin America. I stand to be corrected. Anyway, I agree that I'm going to leave him with my driving license, which, by the way, is just a laminated piece of paper. And I'm going to go down to the nearest town. I'm going to get him $100 from the cash machine. He's going to wait there on the only road that goes to the border with Panama. So he's pretty pleased with himself. I'm pretty stoked because I'm getting out of this. I've got to pay him $100, but whatever. I'm still trying to blow smoke up his ass. So I offer him a Coca-Cola. I'm it's a pretty hot day, mate. Why don't I get you a Coca-Cola, $100? I'll come back and we'll just be done with this situation. So I ride off. I'm pretty pleased with myself, but it does not last long. As I'm riding, I'm $100 and the Coca-Cola, cheeky boy. So as I'm riding, by the time I get to the cash machine, I've done a full 180. I'm pissed off again, But the thing is, he's put my license plate into the system. He's taking pictures. So I'm I can't just run away. I've got to cross the border. If I get to the border and they're you're under arrest, that's a big issue, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm just walking up to the cash machine and there's a car pulls up next to me. And I just noticed out of the corner of my eye, it's a police car, it's a truck. And there's 4 guys in it. And I get the light bulb moment. And I walk over to this truck and I said, guys, I was not speaking fluent Spanish. I said, guys, I was not in the mood. I said, do you speak English? One of them spoke very good English. And I said, I just want to check. There's a policeman up there. He pulled me over because I think I crossed the yellow line. I don't think I did. But he just asked me to go get $100 from the cash machine.
Yeah.
Is that normal? And all these policemen were like, no, that's awful. That's because they're all keeping each other honest, right? When there's 4 of them in the car. They're like, that's terrible. And I'm like, brilliant. Well, let's go up there and nail him, right? And they're like, oh, no, we don't want anything to do with that sort of thing. And I'm like, well, this is my predicament. I've got to get to the border with Panama, today or soon. And it's still 100 kilometers away. It's 4 o'clock. You've got to help me get past this guy. He's on this road. The alternative is to ride 16 hours. I don't know if you're familiar with Costa Rica, but there's a huge jungle in the middle. There's only 2 coast roads that leave into Panama. So it's either a 16-hour ride, which I don't have time for, or I've got to somehow get past this policeman. So they say, show us your map like this. And I pull up my Gaia, and they're scrolling around, and they say, look, if you go up to this junction here, there's a gas station. And you go to the gas station, instead of taking a left where he is, take a right, go down a few hundred meters, then take this dotted line, which is a dirt road. It goes up over the ridge, and you'll go past him on the other side. And I'm like, brilliant. What a story. I've got these policemen telling me how to get around the policeman. So I'm stoked. I don't get the $100 out. I've got my $30 in my pocket and my taped one somewhere. I head back up the road. I get to the junction with the gas station. I'm just hooking in the left, and I've obviously taken too long. The policeman's coming down the road because he's come to look for me. Mm-hmm. And so I pretend I'm pulling in at the gas station, but I decide I've just got to tell him. You're an ex-policeman, so you'll find
yeah.
So he pulls in, right? And he's got all the bells and whistles. He's on a big Suzuki V-Strom something, police branding all over it, a big helmet with the up visor and the little tinted thing so I can't see his face. And he pulls in and he's got a big smile on his face. And he goes, did you get the money? And there's 9 pumps at this gas station. Central America, all the pumps have an attendant. So there's a lot of people there. And I raised my voice. And I said, I went to the police in town about you, and I showed them the footage. I don't have footage. And they told me, you got to leave me alone. Otherwise, you're going to be in big trouble. And I was shitting myself. Because he's pulled me over for a legitimate reason.
Yeah. And you offered him the money.
And he just goes, okay. And he just rode away. Dude. Wow. And I got like a shiver down my spine. So anyway, the situation now is I'm free to go, but he's wasted a lot of my time. So I head to the border as fast as I can, but I can't do the border now. It's too late. So I camp near the border, and I decide I'm going to wake up super early in the morning, head to the border, pass into Panama, and then basically, then I've got like a 2-day, like the biggest 2-day ride ever to get to Panama City, 800 kilometers on a 250cc bike. I get to the border in the morning. I get there about 8 a.m. Everything's going well until I go to export my motorcycle, and they realize that I've overstayed my permit on the motorcycle. Uh-huh. And they won't let me leave Costa Rica. And what happened was they put 3 months in my passport, and they only put 1 month on the stamp that they put on my...
Yeah.
And I did not check it when I came into Costa Rica. And they tell me that they want to confiscate my bike. And I'm like, I had this yesterday. This is too much. I thought I'd escaped. I thought I was done, but it's back. It's back. And I'm like, this is haunting me now. Like, it's happening again. So I don't tell them where the bike is. It's blistering hot. It's like 37 degrees. I'm eating, the only thing I can eat is fried chicken. It's the only place near. So I'm eating fried chicken. I'm there for like 7 or 8 hours. Oh. And I basically use the entire day. It's like 4 o'clock. And the only reason that my situation changed, I really didn't know what to do. I really didn't have any options. The guy I was arguing with at the counter, we were discussing. Mm-hmm. He got up and went home. And this new girl sits down.
Oh, yeah.
And she went, next. And I went, oh, I'm next. And she pointed out the mistake. And after a few minutes, we got to a situation, again, back to the game of chess, where she said, I'm really sorry, someone made a mistake. And I said, well, is there any way to know who made the mistake? And she said, no. And I said, well, is there any way to know if you make the same mistake in stamping me out? And she went, no.
You're a chance,
I just gave her like a winning smile. Said, please. She just stamped me out. But she did warn me. She said, there'll be legal trouble when you come back here. Wouldn't come back with the vehicle. But whatever. I was just happy to
deal with that bridge when you come to it.
Yeah.
And set it on fire as you pass through. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I crossed the border. Everything's going well. But now I've wasted an entire day at the border. I managed to get like 50 more kilometers done. But I essentially wake up with 1 day to get to Overland Embassy in Panama City. and it's just under 800 kilometers, about 13 hours of riding time.
Mm-hmm.
How was Panama, Charlie? Oh, yeah, it was great. 13 hours of riding.
Head down, arse up, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I make it at it's like 10 o'clock at night. I pull into the campsite at Overland Embassy, and I pack up my bike for storage. I pack up a bag. I've got this weird outfit to go home in because I'm warrantying my Alpine Stars motorcycle boots. So I'm wearing those on the plane, and I've just got a dry bag that I'm holding on the plane. Anyway, I go to check in for my flight, and it says, you can't check in for this flight. And I'm like, why not? And it says, because your passport only has 5 months and 28 days of validity. And I'm like, no, I've done all of this to fly back to Canada. I got hit by the truck. I've been rushing around the police, the border, and now I'm just not even going to be able to get on this flight that I've been trying to get to. Anyway, I was in a trough.
Paid him $100.
So anyway, I go to the airport. This is online. I see this message. Yeah. I go to the airport with my passport. Now, it's worth mentioning I have a 3-part flight. I have one flight from El Salvador to Vancouver, Canada, which is a connection flight. So this is like a 1-part flight. But to get on that flight, I have a single flight from Panama City to El Salvador, and there's only 40-minute changeover in between the 2 flights, like 40 minutes between landing and taking off, and they're not connected. So I've got to get on that second plane. Anyway, I go to the airport in Panama City, and I show the guy. I'm like, look, there's got to be some kind of mistake here, pal. I've got my reservation, I've got my passport, my face matches the passport. Let's get on the plane. And he says, yeah, can't see a problem. I will just do you a handwritten boarding card. So he scribbles one out like that. I've never seen that before. Gives me one of those, and I jump on the plane. Getting off the plane, I'm super hungry, and I know that it's a 5-hour flight with no food the next leg. So I run to Subway sandwich, get one of those, whatever. And then I'm just about to run through immigration. I've got to do the loop, but I realize that my flight is leaving from the gate like just up from mine, and there's only a small barrier like connecting the 2 flights. So I was like, well, if I just squeeze through the barrier there, first of all, I'll miss immigration, and second of all, I'll get on the flight with my sandwich. So I basically squeezed through this barrier.
Let's hope Al Qaeda's not watching, eh?
Yeah, don't tell anybody malicious, just mischievous people. So I squeezed through the barrier, and I get to the front, and the guy says, I can't check you in. I'm like, I know, mate. I think there's something wrong with the system today. You got to write me a boarding card like this. So he just scribbles one out as well. Brilliant. And I just get onto the plane. I've got a window seat. I've got my sandwich. I'm super stoked. The doors of the plane close. Everyone's sat down. And then the plane stops, and the door opens, and a ladder comes up, and immigration come onto the plane. And they're like, where is Charlie Reynolds? And I'm in this plane full of like Latin American people. Oh, no. And then there's like my gringo head sticking up above everyone. So I'm like in my motorcycle boots, and they made me get my passport out of my dry bag in the overhead locker, and they're flicking through the pages, and the pilot starts to get annoyed. He's like, we're going to miss our takeoff slot. Yelling at the cabin crew. Everyone's having a bit of a nightmare. Anyway, the woman looks up at me. She's really not sure what to do. I don't think they know what's wrong. They just know that something is wrong. I don't know if it's because I skipped immigration. I don't know if it's because my passport's invalid. Yeah. I don't know if it's because I forgot to pay at Subway sandwich. I don't know what it is. I know that I've done enough things that could be wrong for this to be a problem. And at the end of it, she just says, we're going to take pictures. They take pictures of every page of my passport, and they just say, sit down like that. And we took off. And I was like, yes, we're going to Canada. And it was such a relief. And yeah, I got back to Canada. I arrived the day before the boys' weekend as a surprise. So people didn't know I was coming. It was a really amazing surprise. You know, these guys were in the middle of the wilderness all camping, and I sort of turned up out of nowhere. And on top of all of that, after 3 years of waiting for my invitation for Canadian permanent residency, the day that I landed in Canada, I got the email in my inbox. So it was like It was like 10, 10, 10, 10, 10. It was like a full win across the board. Oh man, what a period of my life that was. That 4 days it was crazy.
You are like the billboard for suck it and see or wing it, aren't you?
Yeah.
just give it a go and see what happens.
Yeah, I always like that film, Catch Me If You Can.
Yeah. Absolutely. You're one of these people that tightropes that line between the two extremes for sure. Wow, man. So I mean, like, was there any repercussions for going back then when you had to go back into Panama?
No, because I went in with a new passport.
Of course. Oh, Canadian, yeah. Was it Canadian? You got a Canadian passport now then? Is that?
No, I'm just finalising my Canadian permanent residency process. I actually did it just the other day.
Gotcha.
Just a quick shout out to all of you over in the clan on Patreon. Folks, I could not do this without the support of the people over on Patreon in the little community we've got going over there. We call it the clan. I'm not making YouTube millions. In fact, I just about make enough to put in the fuel tank. It's Patreon and my tours, merch, everything like that. That is what allows me to do this full time. We have meetups throughout the year and ride-outs. We do clan-only live streams. And this year, we're even going abroad. Folks, if you think it's something that might tickle your fancy, head to patreon.com/TeapotOne. Check it out and see if it's something you'd like to be involved with. We'd love to have you over there. And lastly, just a massive shout out to all of you who are listening or watching the podcast. If you've liked any of the episodes, given them a thumbs up. If you commented either on the audio podcast or on the video itself. If you shared any of the episodes, it's all a massive, massive help. And it's you who've helped put Bru Time up there in the top 5% of podcasts globally. We are regularly top 3 in the motorcycle world, certainly for the UK. So a massive thank you to all of you. Right, let's get back to it.
Right, yeah. Charlie, I think we better, that's an hour, we better crack on with some questions here. Otherwise, we could be hitting that 8-hour mark.
That's good.
All right. Okay, right, folks, we will head to the clan first off over on Patreon. So it's patreon.com/TeapotOne. First one, Ralph. Hiya, guys. Hope you're both well. All good, thank you, Ralph. Hope you're well. I'll keep it simple. Do you prefer uphill or downhill, and why? I'm assuming he's talking about riding. I like uphill.
So, yeah, it's a tricky question. I think I'm going to go with uphill as well. And I think the reason is I find that when you're on one of those journeys, especially if you're going over a range, the uphill is the first time you're experiencing all the mountains. So that's like the wow moments. You're getting all the wow moments, you're seeing the views, you're discovering it all. And I find a lot of the time, maybe the weather turns shit when you're up there, or you go and camp up there and you're desperate to get some food. I find that the downs, I always find myself speeding through them. I'm still enjoying everything, but the ups is where I really take my time to see everything.
Yeah. I'm more like just the physics of going uphill and going downhill. Going uphill, I find I can moderate the speed and the bike just feels more comfortable for me going uphill. Whereas when you're going downhill, it's very easy for the bike to run away from you. And, especially when you're on.
I quite like the.
Do you?
Yeah, I quite like the skittery sort of loose downhill stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, you're one of these off-road numpties, though, aren't you? You're just one of these freaks that enjoys off-road. I'm like, oh shit, that's me.
I think it's the mountain biker in me.
Yeah, definitely. You're used to having the terrain, the bike move underneath you. I like it. I used to love, like in my Gixxer days, I used to love the feeling of the Gixxer skipping and moving underneath me. There's no traction control, no ABS, none of that. And that's not that long ago. But I used to love the bike moving. Whereas now, I think I've just been spoilt by all the modern gadgets. I love the bike to feel rigid and just stuck, on the road underneath me. Off-road's a bit different, but I'm still like pissing in the wind when it comes to off-road. I do it when I have to do it. That's about it, really.
Yeah.
Right, just that one, Ralph. Next one, David McCracken. How you doing, Davey? Hello. If you haven't covered it already, what made you think riding from Canada to Patagonia would be a worthwhile pursuit? Was it a YOLO moment? Well, we did touch on it, but we can cover it more in depth.
Yeah, I would say I never thought that riding from Canada to Patagonia would be a good idea. I'd barely even ridden in rain or worn motorcycle pants. I never owned luggage, and my luggage arrived 4 days before I left. So I'd never even considered what it would be like to ride a bike there. I just knew that I was going. So I always knew that the journey would be good. But yeah, doing it on a motorbike was absolutely a YOLO moment for sure.
Yeah, because you're talking about you wanted to do it on a truck, wasn't it, or an overland vehicle originally, but just the costs inhibit all that sort of stuff. It's far cheaper for starters just to jump on a bike, isn't it, and go.
Yeah, and now I couldn't imagine having done it in a truck. It's so cool doing it on a bike. It's so cool.
Do you follow Bobby Bolton, One Life Truck It? Do you follow him at all?
I do, yeah.
I mean, what an experience they're having, and
really cool, yeah.
I'm trying to get them back on the podcast now, both of them, back on the podcast for like an update. Cause it's been like a year and a bit that they've been on the road since the last time they were on. So yeah, it'd be good to get them back on for a chat. But yeah, about
very cool.
proper YOLO trip, that, isn't it? He's just going for the pair of them are just going for it. Looks awesome.
Yeah. I think that's a lot of the most inspirational people are having YOLO moments.
Yeah. I think maybe is it more a case now that there's maybe not more people doing, maybe there is, but I think it's more easily accessible now for people, isn't it? You can just pick up your phone and have a look. Whereas, I mean, we had mobile. I did my trip 2012 to 2014, so we had mobiles, we had the internet, but it was like social media wasn't how it is now. You know, Facebook was still fairly, it'd only been around for about 5 years, maybe not even that really for the UK.
Yeah.
Instagram was very, very, very early. Like almost not really used that much back then. But like there were, but overland travel still very much felt like an outside type of thing, an extreme thing to do. Whereas now you pick your phone up and there's just account after account after account of people just off doing these amazing trips and seeing amazing sights, having a whale of a time.
Yeah.
Is that how you research? Davey actually asked, he says, how are you researching your routes, or are you just saying, fuck it, that looks good? Well, that's when you say you'd heard about living with these, you know, indigenous people, or there's a place over here to go and do that. And I had Luke Tarrant on here last week, and he was saying that, you know, they found places to live with local people out on the coast in certain places, and he would stay there for a month. And I was just like, how do you find all this? Because we didn't have, there wasn't like the social media communities that you have now. It was old-fashioned forums, really. You know, it was just, you chucked a stone into a forum. Anyone know anyone here? And somebody would reply.
Yeah, I think part of it is just exploring. A big thing for me is I do really like to ride scenic roads, and I guess over time I've just learned what that looks like on a map. So I hunt for contours on Gaia, and I create hundreds of pins across South America. And I think it's really important on a trip like this to really lean into your version of the trip. One thing that people definitely do in their lives is they live the way they want to live. But I think a lot of people go on a trip like this and they see, you know, there's now a WhatsApp group, for example, for Pan America riders. And they see the places other people go, the things other people do, the restaurants other people recommend, and they jump on this bandwagon. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not for me, but it's like they're all doing the same thing sometimes.
Yeah.
And you know, I think that there's a lot of people who have figured out, and I'm just starting to. But it's really about like leaning into what you want. And at the moment, I'm on my own. I'm young. I can sleep in a tent. I'm on a 250cc bike, so I'm gonna go all out. Like I'm gonna do some of the trickiest stuff. I'm gonna camp in the weird places, and I've decided I want to do this trip again. And that's given me a lot of guilt-free moments of leaving things. I've been leaving things. I'll come back and do that, because that trip would be more suited to doing it on a bigger bike or in a truck with a partner, or So I think for me, it's been about like picking the things I'm most excited about and then sort of riding between them with an open mind. And yeah, that's how I found the best experiences, honestly.
Yeah. David says, have you got a favourite band or song of the moment that keeps you going?
I wouldn't say I have a favourite song. I've been listening to a lot of Massive Attack. Do you remember Massive Attack?
Of course. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, lots of stuff like that. I find I listen to the Matrix soundtrack as well. Fatboy Slim, stuff like that. So, but yeah, I sort of have different music personalities. I'm also quite well known amongst my friends for listening to a lot of classical music, especially classical music from films. So, just an example, I have a playlist on my phone called The Main Character at the Gym, which is a gym playlist full of like Lord of the Rings music and like music from the Avengers. It's super, super weird, but I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, eclectic taste in music. Is that what you have?
Yeah. Nothing gets me going in a set of bench like, the Breaking of the Fellowship, which is the song they play at the end of the first movie when Frodo and Sam go separately from the Fellowship. It's a real moment that it really gets me fired up.
Do you know, there's half the people listening to this podcast that are just like, oh, wow, this guy's just got even cooler. And then there's another half that have just gone, yeah, I'm done. I'm out.
Right. What a weirdo.
Davy's got a last comment, and I don't really know why, but he says sausages. What's that? Sausages. Is that an in-joke?
Who says sausages?
This guy, David McCracken. Gravy Davy Rides is his channel. No, right. Yeah, I don't know what the significance of sausages is. Sorry, David, that's lost on us, mate. Apologies.
Maybe we just need to. Yeah. Maybe we just need to comment on sausages. How do you feel about sausages?
I love sausages. I do like a sausage. That's all we say.
That's all we said. There's your answer.
There we go. I'll ask Davey after this. Right, next one. Simon Lewis. Hi, gents. Great to see Charlie on Bru Time. And by the sound of it, possibly OnlyFans too soon. Yeah, what is this? I keep seeing your reference to OnlyFans.
I mean, I've always enjoyed gamifying things. And I think when I got a lot of messages about starting a YouTube channel the other day, and I just, for a joke, I just said I would start an OnlyFans if I got to 100 subscribers by the end of January. So you've got hours left to get me there. I don't know what my OnlyFans would include, but I will make one if I have to, if you guys win the game.
See, this is the thing, right? OnlyFans, when it first was set up, I think it was along the same lines as Patreon. It was a platform to support your chosen creative person. It just seemed to be hijacked by people getting their bits and their feet out and all that sort of stuff. That just seems to be it now. But I think you can still be on OnlyFans and run it like a Patreon thing. Unless you want to be getting your bits out. I don't know, Charlie, why not? Why not? Who is anyone to judge?
You're gonna have to subscribe to find out, Bruce.
I was going to say he's jumping in with both feet, but I think you're going to have to pay to see that. Right. Simon's questions. He says, Colombia just seems to be the destination that delivers the most amazing experiences. Which particular crossing of the Puente Negra proved to be the most rewarding?
So I'll comment on the first half. I don't know what it is about Colombia, but he's right. Every rider that goes to Colombia agrees. It's a very magical place. It's quite clean. It feels very safe. All of the houses are painted beautiful colors, and the towns are very pretty. And it's really just a country that has everything. Something that you feel when you get there just says like, this is one of my favorites. It's built up without being commercialized. And yeah, stunning scenery and stunning roads. My favorite road was the Puente Negra. Now, Puente Negra is a bridge itself, so that that is my answer. Puente Negra is the really long bridge. I think it's about 50 or 60 meters long. It claims to be 150 meters above the river. I didn't think it was quite 150 meters, but it's certain depth. If you fall off, you're not surviving. That is just a spectacular place to ride. And I will not shut up about getting other riders to go there if they're going through Colombia. Sometimes I honestly feel like I left on this trip just to ride across that bridge. And when I stood on the bridge, it was one of the few occasions where I thought, fuck yeah, this was worth everything that I've done to get to this point. So that was amazing, that place.
This was a reel that you put out fairly recently, isn't it? It's the one where you get off the bike and you stand looking at it. You've got the drone, all sorts going on. Is it that one?
Yeah, and I would say there's like 10 or 12 bridges on that route. It's an old train route that used to connect Bucaramanga with the Magdalena River. And obviously, as the infrastructure of the country developed, it was no longer needed anymore. Mm-hmm. But now you've got a series of tunnels with like almost knee-deep mud in them and water. It's pitch black with bats, and you're riding through a tunnel. And then you've got the tunnels lead to bridges and more tunnels and bridges. It's all in the jungle, and it feels like a level out of a video game. And I've said that a few times about places in Peru as well, but it's just bonkers. It's crazy.
Going back to what you said about Colombia, that's very true. Colombia to me, and I used Colombia as a transient place. I just moved from Ecuador across, made my way to Medellin, and then from there I flew the bike to Panama. So I really didn't explore Colombia, but the short couple of days that I had in there, it felt a lot like Russia in the sense of it was the total opposite of what I was expecting. I was expecting almost like a dangerous. I was expecting to go in there, be on my guard, to be eyes about everywhere, not really be shown much warmth at all by anybody. And it wasn't somewhere where I thought I'm going to feel any kind of connection. And literally, I remember crossing from Ecuador, from the border point on, the people were so nice, so friendly, so welcoming, and that continued the whole way through. And I remember being in Medellin and just thinking, Jesus, I could seriously spend some time here. I'd love to go back and explore. Because you never hear really anything bad about Colombia anymore. Everyone is full of stories like, what you said.
Yeah, it's a bit of I know what you mean. I think it feels, before you go there, like it's going to be a bit more like some of the areas of Mexico, a bit rough around the edges. But when you get there, it's more of like a Garden of Eden. It's lush, it's beautiful, and I don't think I was invited into people's homes anywhere as much as I was in Colombia. So
wow, yeah, awesome. Oh, yeah, I'll have to go back at some point for sure. Simon also says, which is the coolest car you spotted on your travels? Wishing you many safe travels. All the best, Si. Coolest car? Or truck?
Coolest car? Ooh, it's a tricky one. I'd probably say I did see a really nice 60 Series Land Cruiser last week. It was sort of an aubergine color, a little bit like the background of your studio. Uh-huh. It was a manual with brown leather, and it had the barn doors on the back. And it was just mint, and it was just in this little alleyway in a little town in Peru. And it was covered in dust and stuff. But if it was in the US, it would be worth a lot of money. That was pretty cool. But yeah, I'm still a bit of a car nut, and I do post a lot of pictures of the cars that I find on my route, on my page still. Whether people like that or not, I'm not sure that I care. But it's something that I still get excited about.
Do you monitor your analytics then?
On Instagram?
Yeah. Are you somebody that when you post, do you have a look and? Sorry, there seems to be a heck of a delay, like a couple of second delay here. Sorry.
Oh no, it's going to catch up. I don't particularly try and look at that all the time. I just I'm just going to keep posting what I like. I don't tend to try and think about what people want to see too much. Otherwise it's not fun, right?
Yeah, I definitely fell into that trap when I
I had the YouTube channel going when I was traveling, and then when I finished traveling, it was like, well, it's done now. So, why would anyone watch? I didn't post anything for about 2 years, almost 3 years. And then when I started posting again, end of, was it 16 or 17, I started posting again. And God, yeah, it's literally you're refreshing the browser all the time or the app, and it's like, all right, how many subs have you got now, and how many views have you got? But it sucks the life out of all of it. That's what I've figured out now.
Yeah.
It just sucks the life out of it, and I think. So another YouTuber, a chap called Richie Vida, he said something to me which sort of changed my attitude on it. And he just said, you know what, I'm not bothered about any of that now. It's just I'm going to make the content I want to make, and if people like it, brilliant. And you just sort of takes the stress out of it. You're just like, okay, right, fine.
Yeah, much better.
Yeah, as long as you're not relying on any income generated from like views and stuff. Then obviously you need to try and get your views up if you are. But just enjoy your trip. Just enjoy it and make the content. And you certainly seem to be. Right, cheers for that, Simon. Next one, Owen Harries. Evening both. Great to see another intrepid explorer exploring. A divisive question for you both. How do you both convince each other that your bike is best? Splitting a 1000cc between you. How do you both convince each other that your bike is best, splitting a 1000cc between you?
Oh, I think he means the difference in the capacity of our bikes is 1000cc.
Sorry, right, okay. Now I get you. Now I get you. So what would you go for? Would you go for the small cc, obviously?
I think so, yeah. I think this comes back to the stage you're at in your life and the type of adventure you want to have. And I'm 33. I'm still okay to get quite uncomfortable and to get to some of the places that I personally wouldn't. For me, it's not about CC. It's just about weight, right? I just want something that's going to go far and it's going to go into places that bigger bikes can't get to. And I do suffer on the highway. I do suffer on big stretches, but it's just a sacrifice that I've decided I'm willing to make. So
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I took a jigsaw. I took a jigsaw on mine, and I knew that the off-road bits were going to be bloody hard. And I knew those days. I think the most I ever did was 1,400 miles in a day. I did in Russia. Yeah.
That's crazy. 1,400 miles.
Miles, not kilometers. Miles. Yeah, it took me 23 and a bit hours. Yeah,
that's the biggest thing I've ever heard of.
It's the biggest one I've done for sure. Yeah, and I mean, I literally, I remember getting to I came into a town called Cheetah, and I remember just looking for the big tall building and like a skyscraper type thing, and I just remember looking at it and thinking, that's got to be a hotel, and I just aimed at it, and I didn't care if this place was like, the Savoy. I didn't care. It's like, I just want to get off the fucking bike, and I remember getting there, and I literally, I couldn't get off the bike. I was seized. So I had my rucksack on my back and everything. Eventually I managed to just throw myself off the bike to the side. And I was lying in my leathers like an upturned turtle. And I just couldn't move. And the security guy's just looking at me. I'm like, hello.
No.
Yeah, you just got to wait till you get blood back into your extremities. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend it. Having said that, I'm doing another challenge ride on Sunday. On Sunday, I'm taking the new GSA. The new automatic GSA, the 1300.
Oh, cool.
I'm taking that to do a ride that I do called the Full Monty. So you start. I'm starting from my dealership in Brighton. From there, you ride to Land's End. Then you go St David's in Wales, and then from there to John O'Groats. From John O'Groats to Nest Point, and then back to your start point. So that's about. I think that's somewhere in the region of 2,500 miles, and you have to do that in under 48 hours. So that's a tough one. Especially if you're filming. Yeah, and I'm filming it as well, so you can't take the piss with your speed. Like when I've done it before on the jigsaw, you can just open it up and enjoy yourself. But when you're filming, it's a different kettle of fish. You kind of need to watch what you're doing, as I found out. Yeah. So you'd go for the smaller CC. Do you know what? I wouldn't be bothered. It just doesn't bother me. I'll take anything. I don't care what it is. I'll take a 50cc. I'll take a 1000cc. I'm not bothered. I can't ride off road as it is. So, whether that's a 50cc or a blooming 2.5 litre Triumph Rocket, it makes no difference to me. I'll just paddle my way through.
One thing I will say is, if you've got a super expensive bike and you're not going on a trip like this, and you want to go on a trip like this, I think there are a lot of people who, they say, one day I'm going to save up to go on the Pan America Highway on a T7. And actually, a T7, how much is a T7? 20 grand?
It's not that much now. Nah,
I'm thinking in Canadian dollars. You're thinking in British pounds.
Yeah.
But my point is that, like, the difference in cost between my bike, which is a used CRF, and a T7 is probably half the budget of the trip.
Yeah.
So I think, another point alongside the hardest part is leaving is, you don't need to wait to have this like ultimate motorcycle. Whatever motorcycle you have now, or whatever motorcycle you can afford now, even if you have to sell the vehicle that you thought you were going to do the trip on to afford the trip in the first place, which is arguably the ultimate sacrifice, especially when you spent a long time building that vehicle. That's, in my opinion, is a very valuable decision to have made.
And almost the smaller and cheaper the bike, the cheaper it's going to be to ship it. Whether you're shipping it by air, shipping it by sea, whatever it is, it always has an impact on it. And if you're going from the UK, then you're going to need a carnet de passage for certain countries as well. And that is directly proportional. The cost of that carnet is directly proportional to the cost of the vehicle. So the cheaper the bike, the better, really, for the carnet.
Yeah.
But those things change all the time. Like when I did it, swing the lamp. When I did it, there was only one place to get the carnet de passage in the UK, and that was from the RAC. So it was very, it was just that's what you have to do. That's the process. I think, am I right? I don't know if you've got any knowledge of this. I think there's a few places you can get it now. Is that right?
I haven't looked into the carnet yet, just because I haven't needed one for my trip so far. But for future trips, that's the big concern, isn't it? Is the carnet. But
I think I needed one. I think I needed one to enter Colombia back in 2000. When did I go? 2013. I went into Colombia. I'm sure. Crossing from Ecuador to Colombia, I think I had to show them my carnet. I think.
Interesting. Yeah. No, I haven't had one for this trip. So.
Right. Next one. Colonel Bullen. Hi to you both. Another great guest, Bruce. Charlie, which country surprised you in a positive way, and why?
I think my main answer would be Colombia, but we've gone over that, so let's take Colombia out of the picture and we'll pick another country. I'm going to pick Guatemala. The only thing I knew about Guatemala was that there was a volcano there. Aside from that, I didn't know anything about Mayan culture. I didn't really know anything about just the number of. It's almost like they've got their own wonders of the world in Guatemala. You've got Samuk Champey, you have got the volcanoes, but then you've got Lake Atitlan. I thought the people were really lovely in Guatemala, and I did end up spending 2 months there. And I definitely don't regret that. There was all sorts of weird and wonderful towns, things to discover, and all in a very small space. Very friendly people, and they speak nice, slow Spanish as well, which is great.
Yeah. Did you speak Spanish before you embarked on this trip, or did you learn it to do it?
I did go to a Spanish school in Guatemala at Lake Atitlan, which was brilliant. I stayed with a Guatemalan family at the lake, so it was sort of like an immersive experience.
Yeah.
And I did school, I think it was 4 or 5 days a week, 4 hours a day. And if you're planning a trip like this is the best money I've spent. You get 3 meals a day, snacks throughout the day, coffee, 4 hours of lessons, and a bed to sleep in. And I think it was like 30 quid a day. It's $250 for the whole week. Everything.
Wow, and that's probably made them up as well, isn't it? That's like a good chunk of change for them. Yeah.
They're probably stoked, yeah. But it was a really great school. I went to San Pedro Spanish school, if anyone's listening and wants a tip. But I couldn't recommend it enough.
It's going to be a bit extreme for me. I take motorbike tours over to Spain all the time, and I keep thinking to myself, I need to learn this language because I can order a couple of beers. That's about it. But maybe a trip to Guatemala is going to be a little bit too extreme. Never say never. We'll see. We'll see.
There you go.
Next one, Nathan Moore. Hi, Charlie. Do you often get mistaken for a young Simon Pegg?
I do, yes.
100%. Now I've read it. Yes.
I think especially when I've got like a little bit of facial hair, if I'm like clean shaven, then I get it less. But yeah, especially with this little, whatever this is going on at the moment, then definitely, yeah. There was a Halloween party that was cancelled one year because of COVID, but I was planning to go as Sergeant Angel from Hot Fuzz with the shotguns and the glasses and the police vest and stuff like that. So maybe I'll do that again in the future. Maybe I'll revisit that idea.
You should get a false passport made up, Simon Pegg. Just chance your arm in one of the. Well, maybe don't actually. You'll end up in prison. It's probably not a good idea. Nathan's got some questions. I just watched you drag your bike up El Desaguadero, and push it over what was left of a rickety old bridge in Peru. When you find yourself in these extreme situations, where do you find the extra energy and determination to push through? Good question.
Yes. So I've always been a little bit of, I'm going to think about this for a second. I've always been a little bit of an explorer, but I'm not always referring to that in a physical sense. I've always been exploring new ways to hold my attention. And, you know, some people call it ADHD. I like to call it the wandering mind. But I've always enjoyed high pressure situations, high consequence situations. I'm very aware that some of them are quite dangerous, but a lot of these things, they just give me so much energy. The energy comes from being in the situation. It really does fuel me on. And there's a lot of situations where I'm filming these things and I want to share the experience with other people, and I'll go into a sort of flow state where I'll be doing that whole day of like pushing a motorbike up a muddy hill, dragging it around, and I'll forget to eat, and I won't notice my low blood sugar because I'm so focused on how engaged I am with this activity.
Yeah.
So I think it's something that suits me mentally. Physically, one thing that I've learned is anyone that rode when they were younger is a little bit of a mentality monster. So you did just have another rower on the show, Luke. Mm-hmm. Anyone who rode as a kid, really, like even up to the age of 18, will tell you that 2,000 meter time trials, 30-minute time trials, seat racing in a boat for your place in a crew.
Yeah,
these are brutal moments in a child's life. You know, sometimes you're throwing up or you're falling off. I had friends who were 15 years old who would come off a 2,000 meter ergo rowing machine time trial with the whites of their eyes red with burst blood capillaries. Just some of the things that you go through in that journey to become a rower, it really extends your perceived limits of what your body can do. And it just, you're taught to push. And so I've always enjoyed pushing since then.
I remember watching, there was a documentary on Sir Steve Redgrave, Matthew Pinsent, and I'm really sorry, but I can't remember the other two chaps that were in the fours. And it was their James Cracknell and a chap with longer blonde hair. Can't remember his name. God, it's terrible. But they were going for the Olympics. And it was a documentary just following their training, getting ready for these Olympics. And Redgrave pushed it so hard on the rower, he had an epileptic fit. And they were just like, he's just one of, well, they all seem to be, you know, to get to that level, you just seem to be the sort of person like elite special forces, that sort of stuff. These people that just push, where everyone else's brain is going, you've got to stop now, you're going to die. Everyone else, these special people just push through and they never switch that off. They just keep going and keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, feeling a bit tired now. I'll stop. That'll do.
Yeah. No, it definitely affects you in a positive way. It's a really interesting sport. My dad was a big rower. He's a bit of a nutcase as well. He's got a bunch of Guinness World Records for different rowing.
Really?
Yeah. The funny part is that he took them all on his 70th birthday, all in the same year. He put together like a crew of guys, and they went and did a bunch of challenges to celebrate his 70th birthday. So
awesome!
You can see a little bit of where I get my energy for life from.
Man, that's mental. That's awesome. I'm just getting into rowing the last couple of years. When it New Year comes, January the 1st comes, and you're like, right, I'm going to sort myself out. There we go. Let's go for it. Well, I bought myself a Concept 2, so it's behind you in this. This is just a cabin at the bottom of my garden that I've turned into like half an office studio for me. But over there, there's like the gym equipment. Obviously, I'm not really using it, but I do use the rower a couple of times a week, and I really enjoy it. But I'm just like below the bottom rung, I would suggest at the moment. It's a long way.
Yeah. Do you live near a river?
I do actually. Yeah, I'm near Maidstone in Kent, and just the other day I saw some people in the boat. There was 4s there, and I thought, ooh.
You should check out skiffing. So my dad lives next to a skiff club now, and I've done a bit of skiffing when I was younger. But it's not these skinny little fiberglass boats. They're sort of like bigger wooden boats.
Right.
And it's a lot more strength and a lot less enduring. It's still great for your body. But yeah, it's sort of like a cross between like rugby lad meets rower. And it's great. Yeah, the club seems to be a little bit more sociable, a few pints after, and things like this. So if you ever get a chance to try skiffing, I highly recommend it.
Sold, Charlie. Sold. Going to be Googling this when we finish. Skiffing. Right, okay. Finally from Nathan, a daft question for you both. Would you rather fight a kangaroo or a badger? Wow.
I think a badger. I've seen the videos of kangaroos online.
Have you ever met a badger?
No, no. I'm going to go with dumb ignorance here. I've seen the kangaroos fight. I'll take the badger, whatever it is.
Do you know, I've seen both, and I'd go for the kangaroo, as long as it's not like have you seen those Arnie kangaroos?
Yeah,
they're like they're on everything. I'm fighting one of them, but the other ones, I have a go at one of them. Badgers. When I was about 10, 11, one of my best mates from school moved from Scotland down to Cheshire. So one sort of school holiday, my mum chucked me on the bus, and I got the bus down there, met up with him, stayed with him and his family, and we were right into fishing. So we used to walk across some farmers' fields and through some woods to it was like an old bomb crater, but it was a pond now that had fish in it. And I remember early one morning we were walking through this field, and we just heard this, it sounded like a demonic beast screaming. And we turned around and it was a badger. We must have been near, it must have had young or something, must have been near its set. But this thing was charging at us through the field. And we started legging it, and this thing chased us all the way. And we eventually had to leap over a hedge.
No way. Yeah. I was thinking of being quite small, like you could just kick one and give it a punt, but maybe not.
They're sort of... I mean, bear in mind I was about 10 or 11, so everything seems a lot bigger, doesn't it, when you're smaller? But I remember thinking to myself, this thing looked about as long... I had a black lab called Glenn, and this badger, to me, was as long as Glenn, but about half the height. But it still looked like a fair decent... And I just remember teeth, and this thing was just snarling and almost barking, growling at us, yeah. So yeah, I think I'd fight the kangaroo. We should have a beer with a kangaroo. I don't imagine a badger's very social. Kangaroo, you could probably have a tinny with after, I'd imagine. Yeah.
Probably, yeah. Good fight.
Anyway. Next one, Patrick. Hi to you both.
Bruce, if it's possible, I'm going to very quickly take a leak.
Yeah, of course. Fill your boots. No problems.
I'm not going to turn this off because I'm going to be very quick. So I'll be back in a
worries.
second.
All right, bud.
Bye.
All good. Is that better? Can you concentrate now? Right. Cheers for that question, Pat. Nathan. Next one is Patrick. Hi to you both. Can I ask Charlie, what's the one piece of equipment that you're really glad you packed for this adventure? And is there any item that you now realise you might just as well left at home? Always get asked these type of questions.
Oh, wow. Okay, so I'll go through the list of things that I bought that I left at home. A lot of the things that I bought that were useless are all security items.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, locks. I had a big chain lock for my bike. I had a disc lock for my bike. I had, what else? I had a big pair of grips for some reason, just in case, you know, like, like the tool. I had a big air compressor for like pumping up my tires. I mean, it wasn't that big. It was like this big.
Yeah.
It was, yeah, I had that. I had, what else did I have? Yeah. And then I had a lot of cheap equipment, which for some reason, I've learned this lesson so many times, but you never buy cheap equipment. It very rarely works out in your favor. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, I had cheap bags, and I actually threw all that stuff away in Guatemala. The locks and stuff is a hugely overplayed thing. I mean, obviously your bike has to be secure. I carried 2 padlocks, and I just chucked 2 cheap padlocks on both of my discs. I've got a lock for my panniers, but honestly, I don't tend to leave my bike out of sight very often, if at all, unless it's behind a in a gated area. So I would say that the security side of things is super overplayed. The most useful thing I bought on my trip is probably, it's kind of ironic because it did just break, but I will stick to my guns. I have an MSR Whisper Light stove, which allows me to cook with gasoline, which is really, really, really handy. Now it is broken. MSR are sending me a part to fix it. But yeah, I think having the stove broken really makes me understand how much I value it, because, you know, there's camping, and then there's camping with a nice tent, a nice bed, and hot food. They're 2 very different things. And at the moment, I have some punctures in the seam of my airbed, and I do not have a functioning stove. And camping is very hard work when you have to wake up 4 times in the night and inflate your air mattress again. And you have to eat cold food. So yeah, I really, really love having a stove, but I think a lot of people think they can bring a stove. You can bring a stove that takes butane gas, but you will be making a beeline to the nearest camping store every week, sort of thing.
Yeah. I had an any fuel stove. You know, literally you could burn wood with this. You could burn petrol. You could burn anything at all. You would use it. Never used it once. No. Yeah, never used it. My camping setup was tent, sleeping bag. That was it. Absolutely, that was it. And I was like, I must have had no feeling at all in my 30s, mid-30s to late 30s, because I had no, I mean, I literally slept on rocks and I was fine. I could sleep, no problem at all. I remember at the end of the trip, my wife came and met me at the Isle of Man, and we went to Isle of Man TT for one of the last legs of the trip. And like, she was like, I'm not sleeping in that tent you've been in for 2 years. I'll bring a new tent with a new sleeping bag. And she had like a big double air mattress and everything. Looked amazing. I got on it and I couldn't sleep on it. Like, literally my back would cramp up. I couldn't sleep on an air mattress. So I ended up having to like get out the tent once she was asleep. I'd have to get out the tent. And at that point we were staying in the campsite at the football club on the start finish line on the TT course. And I would have to go into the shower blocks and sleep on the bench. It's the only way I can sleep.
Well,
I was like that for ages. Like once I got back home and into my wife's flat at the time, I couldn't sleep on the bed. I had to sleep on the floor.
That's weird, mate.
Yeah. Now I love the bed. Give me all the comforts. But for the first, I would say, I don't know, first at least 4 or 5 months, it was like, just let me have the floor. I'll take the floor. Yeah. Yeah. So you got an air mattress. What else you got? You got one of these foldable reclining chairs.
I do have one of those, yeah. Yeah, it's about this big. It's great. A little chair.
They are amazing, aren't they? I took the piss out of my mate royally because he spent, I think it was about 160, 170 quid a few years ago when they first came out. And we were like, what the fuck are you spending that money on a chair for? First time we went camping, he pulls this chair out. He sat there. We're all like, would you get that chair?
Yeah.
Amazon, will you deliver it to this campsite, please?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, what about an item that you think was useless and you may as well have left it at home?
I would say all of the security stuff.
The security
so
stuff.
The chains, the locks, all that stuff. It weighs a lot, and the pump as well. Now I have 2 padlocks. I chuck them on my discs, and then I have just a bicycle pump.
Yeah. Do you know? I remember people saying that to me, and about security. You know, you're going to have to be careful. I never once felt afraid for my bike.
No,
I don't think. In fact, that's lies. There was one point when I crossed from Mexico into the States. I was in the first night was in San Antonio in Texas, and I booked into like a Motel 6. You know, those really cheap motel type places.
Yeah.
And I remember speaking to the 12-year-old kid that was behind reception and getting a room, and he said, "Oh yeah, I've got you a room on the ground floor." So I said, "Oh, thank you very much, cheers." And he said, "Yeah, you're a biker, your bike's here." And he said, "Yeah, you can just bring your bike in." I said, "Sorry." And he said, yeah, just what all the bikers do. They take the bike into the room with them. Because he said, if you leave it outside, it won't be here in the morning. And it was only then I was like, where the hell am I? Where is this place? And then you come out of reception and I looked and it was like, you know, I was in crackhead heaven. I just hadn't noticed really. Just oblivious, aren't you? Yeah, but for the rest of the trip, I never felt
no
at risk. In fact, the only place anything got nicked, I tell people this, the only time I had anything stolen from my bike was at the TT when I parked up and I left my bike at the campsite car park outside the clubhouse, surrounded by hundreds of other bikes, and I left the tank bag on there with some tools in it, and someone stole the tank bag.
Bastards.
Yeah. Yeah, I know, yeah. Yeah, and all these Scousers are there, and they said, I bet it was all those Poles. I was like, yeah, it would be the Scousers. The Scousers have nicked it. Plainly, the Scousers have nicked it.
Hilarious.
Right, last one from Patreon. Biker Buddy. Hi, Charlie. Hope you're both well. What has been your worst day and your best day? Stay safe.
Worst day. I did have a really upsetting moment in a canyon in Mexico. Now, I was riding through this canyon, beautiful canyon, really high sides, and I was riding down a riverbed in the middle. And this thing's, you know, it's as wide as like a car. You just about get a car down it. Really high-sided canyon. And I was flying my drone, making one of my videos. And what happened was I used to keep the drone controller just in the top of my tank bag, and I would set it up recording a shot, and then I'd record and ride through the shot so I get the video. And what happened was it lost GPS while it was flying, and it drifted, and it was very high. It drifted into the side of the canyon.
Oh, no.
And it fell and it crashed down, and the drone was completely destroyed. Not a huge deal. You know, it's $500 to replace the drone. But when I got to the drone, I noticed that the memory card with all of the footage from the first half of my trip had fired the memory card somewhere into this canyon. And it's a micro SD card. It was gone.
Oh.
So I was kind of gutted about that. I didn't give a shit about the drone, but losing all of the footage from the trip up to that moment from the drone, I was pretty pissed off about that.
Well, you hadn't backed it up? You hadn't copied it across onto a
No,
hard drive?
I'd never had to learn that lesson. And I don't carry a laptop with me, so I don't have anywhere to back it up to.
Seriously? So you've got no backup of all your footage?
I do now. I have them on another memory device I have with me, but I do everything on my phone. I don't have a laptop, so it's a bit more difficult to back things up.
Bloody hell, wow. See, I learned that lesson. I took a laptop with me, and I had, they weren't SSD drives. They were the traditional, the spinny disk drives. Yeah. SSD drives were like thousands and thousands of pounds for like a 1 gig SSD drive, even.
Yeah.
And I got to, where was I? I think I was in Thailand no, I'd just got to Korea. I was in South Korea, and that hard drive shit itself. So literally all the trip, all the build up, everything. Because I was going to be doing a DVD and all sorts at the end of the trip. All of that footage was now like locked on this hard drive. I had no idea if I'd ever be able to get it or not. Thankfully, when I finished the trip, I sent it off to a company, and they kind of recovered about maybe 40-50% of the footage, I suppose. But yeah, from then on, I was like, right, backing this up 2-3 times. So yeah, for sure. Oh, wow. I was going to ask, like, I was hoping somebody might have asked one of these questions about your filming and your editing, because that sort of stuff really interests me. How do you... Like you must plan like a shot list. Say you're going to tackle a specific route or one of these bridges, or pardon my ignorance, I can't remember the name of the pass that you just did over on Christmas Eve there to go and meet your mates. We've got to chat about that because that was astonishing. But when you're going to go and do something like that, I'm assuming you must in your head like plan a shot list, a plan of attack, and this will make good footage, and I'll put the drone up for that. Where do you find? I mean, like. Well, I know what it's like doing it on a road, and the last thing I want to do is get off the bike, set a camera up, put the drone up, and all that.
Yeah, I think I'm lucky. Like I said before, I really enjoy it. I don't see it as being a burden on me in terms of time. I really enjoy getting the shots as much as I enjoy riding that section of trail, or I love framing the shots and I love putting it all together. I think the difficult thing is where you don't make a plan. If you just go out and get as many shots as possible, you're going to be sat there for days editing. Yeah. And honestly, I mean days, because if you've got 400 clips to look at and you want to make a video that is only 30 clips, you're going to have to make 400 decisions. And those decisions are, unfortunately, you will make them, but there is a period of time where you delay making the video because you're like, I've got to make 400 decisions about which clips to use. And that's the hardest part. So what I do now, if I have a little moment or a story I want to capture, like the bridge crossing recently, what I did in that one, I was sat with my bike for quite a while, waiting to see if someone would come to help me cross. Mm-hmm. And I took my phone out of my pocket and I made a note, and it said GoPro, Sony, which is my camera, and drone. And I said, right, I want one shot like this with the drone in landscape, and I want it in portrait just in case. And I want like some shots of the river passing under the bridge, like static shots on the camera. So I made a list of all these shots I wanted. I want one of me checking out the bridge with no bike. I want one of me taking my bags off the bike. And just enough that I thought would tell the story. And that's what I was doing while I was waiting for help. And then I decided to set the cameras up for when someone did come to help. So I put the tripod on the bridge with the camera with the right angle to catch me coming along. I had the drone charged up, ready to fly. And the sun just started setting, and it came underneath this cloud, and it shone this beautiful light on the bridge. And I was all ready to go, and there was nobody there. And at that moment, I just thought, well, let's just push record and just
wow,
not fall off. So, but yeah, that helps a lot. Making a little storyboard in your brain or on a note somewhere before you make a video like that, it really makes the editing process that much simpler. And I think it makes the story a lot better and more fun to digest as well.
Definitely. So for me personally, I do 2 different types of content for YouTube. I do like your sort of review tutorial type content where you know what you're going to be filming, so you can like not work out a script, but you've got an idea as to what you're going to say, and I'll give myself some shots, like actually write down a shot list. Those videos, I mean, I can edit one of them, I can film it and edit it almost in a day, but the vast majority of my stuff is based around my touring business when I'm taking customers away on tours, and you just don't know what you're going to be filming. So you're literally, you've got the cameras rolling, and I don't just switch them on and leave them. I switch them on and off throughout the day, and you listen to the crack on the comms, and okay, I think this could be some good stuff. So you have some record there and record a little bit of the crack, and this looks like yeah. So I'm doing that, but I end up every day there can be anywhere from, say, 2 to 8 hours of footage if you're going to do 2 days together. And exactly what you just said, you sit there and you've got a timeline of even an hour timeline. You sit and you look at it and you're just like, you've then got to listen to all that, even at double speed. You've got to listen to it and just start chopping away, like you said. And you end up with hundreds, if not thousands, of little clips. And, you've got to do, I'm a bit of I'm quite anal with it, so I hate, if you don't overlap, if you don't do like J cuts or L cuts or fades with the audio, if you don't do that, you can end up with little clicks and it can be quite abrupt. I hate all that in audio. So every single clip, you've got to go through all that. It takes days. It takes days to do these videos now.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah, so I much prefer your way. I like that. I was thinking I need to change the way I film and edit my tour stuff because, I've still got all of 2024 still to edit in terms of tours. So it's and the tour season kicks off again end of April. So it's like, Jesus, I've got to redo this somehow. Yeah, for sure. Right, that's all the questions over on the clan. We've still there's one on Facebook, and then there's a couple over on Instagram, which I know you've been interacting with. Have you got time for these?
Yeah.
Right, awesome, lovely. Thank you very much to everyone that left questions there over in the clan. So I head across to TeapotOne on Facebook now. Oh, let's just refresh my page. Sorry, bear with me 2 ticks.
No worries.
Where have I gone? There we go, here. Right, where are you? So the only question on Facebook, there was loads of people saying they were looking forward to doing this, listening to this, but there's one question, and that is Jim Wood. And he says, do you think you'll be able to keep the down-to-earth, carefree attitude when doing the YouTube channel? It seems to become a chore for some people, and it shows in the content. He's an awesome lad, so adventurous. Well, that's interesting. That's exactly what we've just spoken about, isn't it? So yeah, what's your plan of attack when you move to YouTube?
I think, again, there's 2 ways that people go when they seem to start a YouTube channel. One of them is to have this like super curated, like I'm making a movie type thing.
Yeah.
And the other one is just kind of off the cuff. And I think that I'm lucky enough that, if I get a phone and I push record and I start chatting shit, sometimes it's good shit. And I don't know what that is, but it's not worth thinking about. If that's something that I can do, I think that, a YouTube channel would be something like a 50-50 split of those 2 channels I just talked about. So it's 50% of it's going to be off the cuff, unscripted, fun stuff. Try and keep it down to earth, trying to keep it super relatable. But I do love the photography side of things. I do love framing the moment and telling the story visually. So I think I would go right down the middle and say it's going to be a black and white. It's going to feel like you're watching, The Dark Knight for 5 minutes, and then it's going to feel like you're watching a bit of slapstick comedy for 5 minutes. That's what I would want to see. You want to be inspired by the locations and the places and some music and some story, but you want to have like a relatable character who at the end of the day is just Charlie. So yeah, that's my plan at the moment. Whether that's popular or not, I don't know, but it seems like something I'll be able to manage and be consistent with, which is the most important thing. So
yeah, and it'll be a question of migrating as much of your following over from the Instagram platform across to YouTube, because they don't necessarily fit each other. It is totally what people like on Instagram, a lot of the times they just don't tolerate on YouTube, and vice versa. It's weird how that works. But yeah, you just build up your community on whichever platform it is that you're dealing with, and go from there. Yeah. Who's your like go-to content creator for you then? Who's somebody on any of the social platforms or YouTube? Who's somebody that you would go to and you follow their content or you like the way they do stuff?
Interesting. Do you know, I'm quite picky with the stuff that I like. I do like really nice, crisp photography. So I've got a few people that I follow like that. One person I've been enjoying recently is Sandra Schmidt. I'm sure you follow.
No, it's a new one on me.
No, I'll send it to you. But he's a pro mountain biker. He actually has a similar story to me in that he left on a motorcycle trip down to Africa a few years ago on his first bike just after passing his test. Had very little idea what he was doing, and now he's on his second trip. So he's riding off road from where he lives, which is in Switzerland, I think, to the Himalayas. And he's on a T7. Oh, wow. You know, he's got no mirrors. The guy's a really great rider. You know, he's a professional mountain bike rider, but he's really sending it. He's really he's really getting after it, that guy. So I really love his content. That would be the standout for me. Yeah, Sandro. We've been chatting. He's a cool guy. So
awesome. I'll have to check him out. Do you know? Have you heard of Peter McKinnon?
Peter McKinnon. That does ring a bell.
No way. No, wow. He's like, for me, it was Casey Neistat. Casey Neistat on YouTube was like the god. Oh, yeah. And his content was phenomenal. Then Peter McKinnon came along round about 2017, 2018. And he took Casey Neistat's style, but made it his own. And he was a professional photographer that just got into YouTube as I quite fancy doing this, but he brought Casey Neistat's sort of vlog style, but brought in all the the discipline of being a professional photographer and a professional filmmaker, which I know Casey was as well. But it was just like an altogether much more polished end product.
I think Casey's style was kind of like quite authentic and off the cuff and a bit more
guerrilla, run and gun.
Yeah, it was like professional slapstick style.
Yeah.
But yeah, do you know what? If I saw this guy, I would probably recognize him, but I'm probably just not clicking on the name.
He's got millions and millions of subs. His content is phenomenal. He's well into his photography. He's well into his black and whites. He's very well known for his slow-mo type stuff. You know, he could be chatting, doing a video on one thing, and then he would just get a pack of cards out, and then the next thing you're doing like a montage shot, but it's all slow-mo, really artistic, of just a pack of cards. But you end up watching it because it's like, this is art. It's just stunning. Cool. There's a few people. He's got a friend, a Finnish guy that's, again, he's out in Canada as well, called Matti Hapoja, I think his name is. If you find Peter McKinnon, you'll find Matti off of it as well, and they're quite similar, but I love their style of content. I'd love to be able to do stuff that they do.
Nice. I'll take a look.
Right. Okay, so we'll pop across and we'll do the last load of questions over on Instagram. So first one, R1 Soul. First question from a follower. Are you mad? Do you have a death wish? Has he got good life insurance? Yeah, okay, 3 questions, but who's counting? Yeah, so you like to push things.
I do, yeah. I've been thinking about this a bit recently, and I think there's lots of different layers to this. I think that, first of all, if I asked you what you're going to do with your life if you had 30 minutes to live, what would you say?
Live it. Send it.
What would be your style? What would you do? I'm talking about like an actual activity. Keep it clean, please, as well.
I would. How long have I got?
30 minutes.
30 minutes. Oh wow! If I've got 30 minutes, then I'm getting my wife, and then I'm getting my family and friends on a nice big group call. And
there you go. Yeah. So it's like that is like what you're thinking about in this moment of mortality, right? You're thinking about things you love, or a lot of people might answer with things like, I chase some dopamine. maybe I watch a sunset, or I drink a lot, or I do something filthy, or, I'd have a delicious meal with my family. Personally, I like the idea of robbing a bank. Now, if I told you you're going to live for 30 years, how would that change your answer?
Oh, God, yeah.
But you're probably going to live the way you're living now.
Yeah, I'm guilty of what I told people not to do when I first came back from the trip. In that people would always say, "Oh, I'd love to do that. I'd love to do that, but I'd love to do that, but." And I used to say to people, "That's why you're not going to do it, because you're putting the but there." So this dream trip will never happen when there's a but. Yeah. What you need to do is go for it. You need to commit to it and go for it and make it happen, because no one gives you these things. You have to get off your arse. You have to figure out how you're going to fund it. All the logistics. You make it happen. Yeah. I'm now at a stage in life where I quite like my home life. In fact, I'll go more than that. I really love my home life. I still have the yearnings for the adventure. I still want to go and do some fairly decent overland travel, but it's not the world trip was. It was a fire. It was a yearn. I made the promise. It was something I had to do. I don't have that feeling for anything at the moment.
No, that's fair. But if you had 30 years left to live, you're enjoying your home life. You're probably going to carry on in that home life, right?
But I would push more for.
Yeah. But there's a sense of security to 30 years, I think, compared to 30 minutes, obviously. And I think those two examples represent, the thinking of mortality, like I'm going to die, and almost like a lot of people think in 30 years. Everyone thinks they're going to live another 30 years. Everyone thinks they're immortal. And I think the perspective that I got when I had my experience, like we talked about, that changed my perspective, was that my ex-partner's father was given 1 month to live. So he was given 30 days. And it made me think a lot about what I would do if I had 30 days left to live. So on the one hand, you've got, saying goodbye to family, quick wins, dopamine, robbing the bank, whatever it is. It's something that can be completed in 30 minutes because we're going to die right now. And then 30 years is this incomprehensible amount of time whereby you don't really do anything. You just say, well, I'm just going to carry on like this. And you're sort of a little bit blinded to your own dreams. But if I asked you what you would do if you had 30 days left to live, it's enough time to start a project, to succeed or fail at something, to learn to play the guitar, or to learn to cook a nice meal. Or maybe it is to go on a really big fucking adventure. Or maybe it's enough time to find a girlfriend, and these things they're not something you can do in 30 minutes. They're a little bit more complex. They involve putting yourself out there and really experiencing life the way you want to experience it. It's enough time to fail 30 days or succeed. And I think that the fact that there's this opportunity to fail makes the potential success that much sweeter. I was speaking to one of my friends the other day, and I asked him the same question. He said he would build a cabin in the woods. Just go into the woods and he built a cabin because he likes building things. I thought that was a really great answer. I think a lot of people think about either I've got 30 minutes to live or I've got 30 years to live. Either they're living until they receive evidence that they're going to die. And my perspective was, if I had a month left to live, I'd really go on a big adventure. And that made me realize that not going on a big adventure with potentially 30 years left to live would be the biggest regret of my life if I didn't. And, the risks that I take and the things that I do are all, I guess, a part of my style of adventure. I really wanted this to be like a real adventure. Like I really wanted it to be, a moment in my life. And I take that theory of 30 days left to live quite seriously, because I think the effect it had on me in terms of thinking, not just short term, but also not thinking too long term, that I lose perspective of death. So, I think I'm living my life like I've got 30 days left to live. And every time I get another 30 days, man, that feels really good. But it just helps me to stay a little bit more humble and aware of my mortality. And it's really led me to some incredible experiences And I appreciate that my risk profile is not quite where others' risk profiles are. But I think the wisdom and knowledge I've gained from my experiences has really changed my life in a positive way. And I hope to share that with other people.
Awesome. So, I mean, do you have no thought in your head currently of the end of the trip? Because I know you've got some pretty exciting news. You've sort of alluded that to there's something else coming once you've got to Ushuaia. But do you have anything in your head about, okay, once this is done, are you thinking at all of reverting back to the old life, or is it this is just it now?
No, I think that when I left on this trip, it was very much a once in a lifetime thing. And I think the most transformative part about being on the trip was that I realized that it was more of a Pandora's box than it was a once in a lifetime thing. I'm not quite ready to reveal the secrets just yet.
No problem. No worries.
But no, I think I certainly feel like I'm at the beginning of a journey, as opposed to just a few months away from the end or from Ushuaia. So I'm talking to people about several projects at the moment, which I will reveal when the time is right. But I think a life of adventure suits me quite well.
There's a weird point on a big trip. There's a weird point normally around about 4 to 6 weeks in, where it stops being a trip and it becomes life. It's just, this is your life now. This is just day to day. And I remember that feeling just being really like reassuring. Up until that point, I'm on a trip, I'm on a holiday. This is new. Oh, how do we do this? How do you do that? At some point, it's just like, you just get up and it's like, right, okay, what are we doing today? Where are we going? Right, okay, I'm still heading east. Let's see what today brings. And I just remember it was so liberating, that feeling of just see what today brings. Let's see what the next hour brings. And I do miss that. I do miss that feeling. That's what calls to me a lot. And probably more and more now as the time goes on, and there's been a big delay from being in that life to being in my current life. I have a yearning to have that feeling again and those experiences again of just see where the wind blows. We'll see what happens. Okay, cheers for that one, Pete. That was R1 Soul. Next one is Cambo 1. Question: has he used AI for any part of this adventure? If so, how? Now, I saw you had a bit of a back and forth with them. What's this all about?
Well, I use ChatGPT. I think that everyone else uses the way everyone else does it. I think it's becoming the new kind of Google search sort of thing. But I have developed a bit of a fascination for it recently, which, I think it's a very cool tool that I think a lot more people should use. So this comment is from my friend Cam, and I've just been telling him about training my ChatGPT. I don't know if you know this, but ChatGPT has a memory, and you can train it to have a certain memory, act in certain ways, act as if it's an expert in X, Y, Z. I've given ChatGPT all the information about what tools I have, what cameras I have, my bike, all of the modifications on my bike. It knows. So it's my mechanic. It's my content advisor. I've given it a name. He's called George. He picked the name himself. And he's even picked a name for me based on all the information it knows about me. And George has decided to call me Rogue. So when he writes
you
me
love
a message,
that, don't you? You love that.
He calls me Rogue, and he signs off as George because I told him to sign off as George on every message. So it's good fun. And I'm actually meeting I was talking to someone today who she's got like the pro version of ChatGPT, and she's done something really cool where she's got 5 GPTs on her profile. Each of them have a picture. She's created a character for each one. One of them is her mechanic who specializes in Royal Enfields. One of them is like a specialist translator. So and she's got 5, and she uses them for like different, that's her tool set, AI. So I'm only just getting into this, but yeah, I use ChatGPT for a lot of things. If I'm feeling lazy, I'll get it to pick a route for me on my trip, or a town for me to visit. And yeah, I enjoy the mystery of kind of throwing something out there to AI. But yeah, I think it's more of a joke from Cam bringing that up.
But it really is a phenomenally powerful tool now, ChatGPT AI. I mean, like you said, if you don't give it specific prompts, what's the word? Yeah, if you don't be quite, you can be very generic with what you ask it, but you're gonna get possibly a generic answer, and it might not be that accurate in the answer that they give you. But the more restrictive you are with the questions you ask, and the more detailed information you give it, Jesus, can it go into the depths and give you? I'll ask it about I'll ask it things for a video. So say I'm doing a review of, I don't know, Insta360 Ace Pro camera. Can you give me a rundown? Can you give me a script for using a review of the Ace Pro in terms of a moto vlogger for YouTube, or for content for Instagram or something like that? I want it to cover bish bash bosh. What would be the best ways of doing this? All that sort of stuff. And you can ask it for like what we just discussed, shot lists. You can ask it for that. It comes out with like a full movie, and you're just like, oh my God, this is brilliant.
Yeah, I had a cool one the other day where I broke my back protector, my D3O back protector, split it. And I took a picture of all the glues on the shelf in the hardware store in Colombia. And I uploaded it to ChatGPT, and I said, which glue should I use to stick back my D3O back protector? And it knew all the ingredients in D3O, and it knew all the ingredients and all the glues on the shelf based on the label. And it said the red one on the second shelf is called this, and that's the one you should use. And that's what stuck my back protector back together. I didn't have to read a single Spanish label.
Mate, when it figures out, when Terminator happens, we are foobarred, aren't we? We are done.
Yeah. That's why I've named mine. I want to stay on its good side.
Do you know, there's a bit of that. I'm always very polite with ChatGPT.
You've got to say please and thank you.
100%. Yeah, but it's like you can see how even over the last year, you can see how it's developed. Like the conversation that you end up having with this computer now, it's like I mean, you wouldn't know. I certainly wouldn't know now the way it structures the sentences and the replies. You're just like, that's how people speak. That's nuts.
It's crazy.
Anyway, yeah, I could chat about AI. I'm on a seesaw with it. Sometimes I think it's the best thing in the world, and the other part of me thinks this is the end. This is just the end of us. We're not that far from when it's the end. Anyway, next one. Whistler MTV Sensei. Question. How many people are tracking your GPS or keeping an eye on you? Anyone? I take it you must know them, do you? They're from Whistler.
Yeah, I do, yeah. I had a lot of people tracking my GPS, my inReach for the Darien Gap trip. In the canoe, and it's nice. Oh
God, yeah, we haven't spoken about that, have we?
Right. So it's nice to have it for people to see where you are. People sat in the office, but at the end of the day, like when you're on the road for so long, people forget that they are, that they've got you. People forget to look at it. Even my parents, no one's looking at it all the time. So I don't think it works from a safety perspective. It's more of like a last known location, just in case. But there are quite a few people who still have that link. Whether they look at it or not, I'm not sure anymore. But yeah, if you'd like it, shoot me a message. You can see where I am.
Mate, if you give us a link, I'll whack it in the show notes for the episode, and people can go in there. On my trip, I had a spot tracker. I know they're still out there now, but back in sort of 2012, there weren't many easily available consumer-based like GPS devices, like an actual tracking thing. Certainly not for a couple of £100. They were stupid money. But this was just a little a little orange box that I could have. I had it mounted on the handlebars of my bike, and it had a couple of different functions. There was like an SOS function. So if you found yourself in a shtick, you could just hit that button. And it was the bat signal. You know, it alerted the emergency services of wherever you were, and it told them where you were. But then it also had like a check-in function. So what I would do is at the end of every day, whenever I set my tent up or had found somewhere to stay for the night, I would just hit that button. And it would automatically text my girlfriend, my missus now. It would text her and say, you know, I'm safe. This is where I am. And it would also post to Facebook. Facebook was the main platform then. And it would let people that were following me, it would post up there and they could have a look on a Google map and see,
cool.
This is where he is. And it ended up being quite a cool little function because that's how people, we weren't at that stage that we're at now where everyone wants like instant gratification, you know, like pick your phone up and do a live from wherever you are. We weren't quite at that. So people were content with just a post that would come up and go, oh, Bruce is here, you know, every day kind of thing.
Yeah.
It worked really well. But I'm not sure if you get away with that now. I think people need like that instant gratification, don't they?
Yeah.
They also ask, what's the most difficult thing to get used to moving?
Bruce,
yep.
I got to quickly take a leak again.
No worries, no problem.
I'm going.
I thought I was the old man here.
I drank too much water.
I'm drinking water. Brewdog. Still not sponsored me. Sponsored Joe Marler, though, haven't they? They sponsored Joe Marler's podcast, not mine. And I grew up near you boys as well. Right, you all right now?
Yeah.
You can get tablets for that, you know.
I'm just well hydrated.
Of course it is. Also, what's the most difficult thing to get used to moving to this type of daily life versus a typical go to work, come home day to day? Thinking of your journey often, my friend. Stay safe, make stories, inspire. I'm tuning in. So what's the most difficult thing to adjust to a life such as yours, where you're on the move all the time?
I think it's probably logistics fatigue is what I would call it. When you go to work every day, you have constants, and the constants are, you know, I have a bed in a house. I take the same route every day to get to work or not or whatever. You have a routine. You know, my toothbrush is in the same place when I wake up every morning. These are the little things that you don't think about, but knowing where your toothbrush is every morning is computing power that you're losing when you come on a trip like this. And every morning, everything's in a different place. Not quite every morning, you know, it might be in the same bag, but it's a different route every day, through a different landscape every day. And there's a different gas station every day. You know, it's nothing like living at home. Living at home, all of the unknowns happen either when you go to work and you deal with problems, or they happen maybe in your free time, your hobbies, your recreational time. That's when you are, you know, using your computing power. But going to bed, waking up, you know, doing your daily chores, it sort of happens autonomously. And when you're on the road, I find that you're making so many decisions every day about what to eat, how to get the food, how to cook it, where to camp, where do I maintain the bike, what needs maintaining on the bike, where can I get that part? Can I get it in this city? Do I need to get it before leaving this city, or can I make it 2,000 kilometers to that city? So I think the hardest part to adjust to is all of your daily functions becoming quite active thoughts as opposed to habitual actions.
Mm. And it's like a chess game, isn't it? You're, as you just alluded to there, you're constantly trying to think ahead, aren't you? Like what you just said. Okay, the tires look like they're wearing a bit. How much life have I got in them? Okay, right. Yeah. Can I make it here? Where do I go when I get there? You know, and like if your bike needs a service or something like that, it's trying to book it all in advance so you don't just arrive somewhere and then go, right, where do I find this?
Oh no, I can't. Sorry, go on.
I really liked that. I really like that way of life. I actually found it I found it very, very hard to adapt to normal life again coming back. You know, I really struggled for the first sort of 8 months, year. Just everyone's, they talk about it now, but nobody spoke about it back then. Like the post-trip blues, it just wasn't spoken about. But it seemed everyone went through it, but just no one ever spoke about it. Now people do, but yeah, I really found it hard to adapt to normal life again, because I found myself getting really frustrated with people, because I'd come back and I'd go back to work in the old Bill, and I'd be working with people, and it's as if you've never been away. It's as if you've never gone and you've never experienced all these incredible things that you have and met these amazing people. These folk that you're working with, friends, they're moaning about the same old shit they were moaning about 2 years ago. You know, like it just seems like mundane bollocks, and they're moaning about it. And I've found myself getting really frustrated and just thinking, I wanted to slap folk and shake them and just go, if you don't fucking like it, change it, do something about it, you know? It was hard. But then one day you catch yourself moaning about something, and it's just like, oh no, I've gone back to the old way. Yeah, I'm back now. Now I fit in. Yeah. Yeah. So you're not thinking about the end at all. Then it's just, let's keep going, just see what happens.
I'm pretty lucky in that I do live somewhere spectacularly beautiful. Going back to normal life for me, I'm really excited to be mountain biking with my friends. I've got my boys trip coming up. Hopefully I'm going to make it back in time for the boys trip. It's the only thing that's daunting for me is that I've sold everything I own. So I'm going to be landing with my Moscow moto panniers, probably in my motorcycle boots again, at Vancouver Airport, activating my permanent residency, which is going to be a whole new thing for me. And I'm going to be sleeping on someone's couch for, an amount of time until I've got myself an income, and then a car, and then a motorbike and a bicycle, and just building up my life again. Not that, motorbikes and bicycles are the most important thing, but they're on the list. That's going to be a really interesting aspect of going home. But I'm excited for the challenge, and it's different for me because I'm going back with my permanent residency now, which I didn't have before. So I'm sort of just seeing it as another chapter.
It's another adventure, isn't it? It's another new life for you, effectively, isn't it? It's not like you're going back to what you possibly were running away from the UK to go to Canada. And, it's still an adventure. It's still new. It's still exciting.
Yeah.
Well, I'm bloody jealous, man. Christ, sounds awesome. So you're not going to ride the bike back then? You're just leaving the bike in Argentina and then just flying?
Yeah, that was another thing that I was going to mention, actually, when we were talking about the different styles of bikes. One thing I am grateful for, having bought quite a cheap bike with me, is that it is very easy to sell for the amount of money that it's worth in Chile. I mean, I hope so, but it's not going to be worth much more than $2,000, $2,500. And I'll be quite happy to take that money for it and pay for my flight home and just call it done, because it costs $3,000 to just ship it back to Canada. Only to be a beaten up 250. It's not worth shipping at home. So I'm quite happy to just wash my hands with it and carry on.
Can't imagine, dude. I've got my bike still in the garage. I've just got it back on the road now. So, I can't imagine getting rid of the beast. She's just, Christ, she'll be with me to the day I pop my clogs. Yeah, for sure. Right, next one. Two up to somewhere. If Be More Charles was a movie, who would play you and how would it end? That is a good question.
If there was a movie about me.
Right, movie about your life.
Let's stick with Simon Pegg, because we've already gone over that. I'll have a young Simon Pegg playing me in the movie. How would the movie end? Interesting. Is this asking me to foresee my own death? Is it?
Well,
or does the movie end when I'm sort of happy and old?
old and grey and content.
Yeah, I think the movie would end with a moment in the future where I'm telling a good story. I think I've always enjoyed the idea of imagining that your life is a story you're going to tell someone else one day. If you're lucky enough to grow older and have people that want to listen to your bloody story. But yeah, I've always enjoyed this idea of like, it's quite a romantic idea, but at the end of your life, you open a big book with your story and you get to tell everybody what happened and what you learned.
Yeah.
And I think that if you were making a movie, you'll allow me a little bit of romantic nature. I think that's how the movie would end. It's either that or it's a fiery crash in a Porsche in a canyon somewhere.
Have you seen Quadrophenia? Have you ever watched Quadrophenia?
No.
Oh, I'll keep forgetting. You're about 3, aren't you? God, I keep forgetting. Quadrophenia was it's an iconic British biker movie, but it was set between the mods and the rockers. When was that? 70s, 80s, the mods and rockers. Yeah. So it finishes with this mod on his scooter, basically going straight off Beachy Head. That's the end of the movie. It's him just riding a scooter straight off. It's awesome. It's an awesome film. It's really, really good film. Yeah, Quadrophenia, it's called. Right, good question, that one. Is this the last one? I think this is the last one. Real Schwerty. Evening, gents. I'd like to know if he thinks the trip from north to south is possible without camping gear. I really don't like those overpacked looking bikes and rather leave my tent and all that at home. Also, I'm not a camping enthusiast, as so many people seem to be. Is it to save money, or why would one prefer to sleep on the ground?
I think the entire question could be answered by the fact that he's not a camping enthusiast. If you're not a camping enthusiast, don't set like, there's 2 trips here. There's a motorbike trip and there's a camping trip, and you can combine them, or you can do just the motorbike trip. Yeah. But don't fool yourself into thinking you're doing a motorcycle trip and you're just camping to save money, because you won't enjoy it and you won't do it, and you'll end up staying in lots of hotels and going over budget. I love camping. I love everything about it, finding the spots, building the tent, like having my little world and having it move around. If you don't like it, don't camp. Do take an emergency bivvy, something that you could just get into if you need shelter. That's very important. Maybe an emergency blanket, foil blanket, and a bivy sack that you can be, you need to be able to survive and not die of exposure.
Yeah.
So without a tent, that is one thing you need. But I would say if I didn't have camping gear, that would remove one of my entire panniers from my bike. So that would be 35 litres down. That means I'm only riding with one 35-litre pannier and a tiny top box, which is probably 5 litres is what I've got. So I challenge, honestly, anyone who's going to ride without luggage to ride with a Moscow Moto Rackless 40, something like that. An 80, I don't think you need it if you don't have camping gear. You can definitely get away with it. If you have no camping gear, I have about 50 litres of capacity. Right now. That's tools, that's clothes, that's everything.
Yeah. I mean, I think always most of my kit is made up of filming stuff.
Yeah.
For the entire year and a half, 2 years that I was away, I had 3 pairs of pants, 3 pairs of socks, 3 t-shirts. I had a pair of trousers that zipped into shorts, a fleece, and some flip-flops. That was it. And then, when pants and socks or t-shirts, when you wore holes in them, well, funnily enough, they've got shops, so you just go and buy another one. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that was fine. You wore one, you washed one, and one dried.
Yeah, totally.
Or you had a reserve. That was it.
Yeah. I think I've got 2 pairs of shorts. One's like a gym pair, one's a normal pair. 1 pair of trousers, 3 t-shirts, 1 hoodie, and then 5 pairs of socks, 5 pairs of pants.
Bit extravagant, that, Charles. God.
Yeah, not very much.
Mate, I stunk. I've still got. Well, I ended up wearing 2 sets of leathers on my trip, And the first set of leathers that I wore for basically 4/5 of the trip, I mean, they're horrendous. Every bodily fluid you can think of has been deposited in those leathers. Well, maybe not every bodily fluid, but I got dengue fever going down through Indonesia. And literally one day I'd been feeling terrible for a few days, unable to keep any fluids in. But I had to get on the road because I had to make this ferry. I had to get on this ferry to go down through Lombok and work my way down to Timor. And I remember being on the bike, stopping because I thought, I'm going to be sick. And I literally like flipped my visor up, not that that's going to do anything, vomited into my helmet. So it just went everywhere. And at that point, it came out the other end as well. So I remember I'm like sat on my bike at the side of this road. It's about 95% humidity. It's about 48 degrees. And my leathers are just full of my own fluids. I was just like, oh, yeah, overland travel's awesome. It's brilliant. Isn't this great? But then I had a 48-hour ferry that I had to, I'm still in this stuff. And it's just like,
that's terrible.
It's horrible. Yeah, the wife won't let those leathers inside, funnily enough. But, well, never mind. I totally agree with what you said there, Charlie, about the camping side of things. I probably camped, I would say a third of the time. And then a third of the time I was in like motels, cheap hotels. And another third of the time I was either staying with people that I met or in hostels, that sort of stuff. I mean, I definitely think like everybody should experience sleeping in the desert. Everyone should have that experience of it's the best night's sleep I've ever had. It's amazing. And the sky, especially in places like Peru, and I don't know what Colombia was like, but I remember being in like Peru and Chile, and you look up and the Milky Way is there, and it's just it's the best thing you're going to watch. The best night's entertainment. It's phenomenal. So yeah, if you can do it, Schwerty, absolutely. Right, dude, that's all the questions. I mean, I could chat. What is your, so far on your trip, what is your standout? Hell yeah, fuck yeah, this is it. What is the standout moment for you so far?
For me, it's, I have this theory, you've got overlanding, which I think is quite a played out term now, especially in North America. It's sort of become a term for strapping some traction balls to the top of a Toyota and going camping at the weekend. But in terms of overland travel, cross-continental, cross-country, crossing a big valley or, a vast area, I think for me, the moments I enjoy most is being somewhere just really wild, somewhere that's difficult to navigate the bike, either through high elevation or technical riding, but having all of my worldly possessions with me. So there's been a few moments like that. Some people like to take their bags off to go for rides. Mm-hmm. And I really like it when I'm on this mission and I'm on an A to B. It's not like a loop or an out and back. I'm going somewhere with a purpose. And to get there, I'm going through Hell's Gauntlet. I'm going up a ridge, I'm going through a forest, like that trip that you saw on Chimborazo. I was trying to pass through the between Chimborazo and Carahuayzo volcanoes. I had all my luggage with me. If I get stuck, I've got my house, put my tent up, I make a meal, I think about it. I'm totally self-sufficient. And that was the same with crossing the Darien Gap. It was a canoe with my passport, my money, my sunglasses, my knife, all my food, all my clothes, everything was there. If I fell out of the boat, everything fell out of the boat, and that did happen. And I think those moments of like making ground through difficult terrain with everything I need to survive, such a thrilling moment, fills you with kind of self-confidence. But I would say the highlight of those type of moments was crossing around a cape called Cape de Tiburon. It's called the Cape of Sharks, which is where you cross from Panama and Central America into Colombia and South America. And doing that, surrounded by waves in a dugout canoe with all my stuff, I felt cool.
Do you know who Dylan Wickrama is?
No.
Oh, wow. There was a film, I'm sure it's still available on YouTube. I'm pretty sure. He made a film about it. The film's called, I think, When the Road Ends, I think it's called. Dylan was riding around the world, and he'd been on the road for 3-4 years by this point. He got to the Darien Gap and then decided, I'm not going to fly. I'm not going to do the usual yacht thing, put the bike on a, how people, you charter a boat, don't you, and do the 5-day barbecue crossing. Didn't want to do that. Yeah. Can you not? Oh, I know one of them sank, didn't it? So they stopped it all.
It's something to do with the Colombian import stuff.
Right.
It's difficult.
Yeah. Is this the guy who built the raft?
Yeah. Turned his GS into a raft and set off. But then
he went the wrong way. He went the wrong side of the continent.
Yeah, he went down the west coast.
Yeah, I don't know why you do that.
The engine broke down and he basically was set adrift. Next stop, Hawaii. If he hit Hawaii.
But he didn't have enough fuel as well, I don't think.
No. Well, he'd planned. He's been on the podcast. It's an incredible story. He'd planned to be at sea for a set amount of time, and obviously he was at sea for a lot longer. And do you know what saved him? Pod of dolphins. He was being stalked by a shark. I shit you not. He's got it on film. You can see it on film. He videos it where he's like, I think this is a shark, and you can just see the fin. This thing is just following him for, I think it was days, and he's just heading west. He's heading nowhere near land, and he's starting to think, I think I might actually be dead because what do I do here? No way. And a pod of dolphins just appeared, and he said he doesn't know why, but he just knew they wanted him to follow him. So he followed the dolphins. I think he managed to get the engine running, and he just followed the dolphins, and the dolphins took him back to land.
That's awesome.
It's a phenomenal story. It was free to watch on YouTube. I think it's called, his name is Dylan, Dylan, and then Wickrama, Wickrama, Wickrama.
Yeah, I think
Oh, it's awesome. It's just, what a story. Well worth watching. But, canoeing through the Darien Gap, why? Like, what? Why? Why did you decide to do that? And B, why none of the others? None of the other options?
I think that the Darien Gap is sort of one of these rare things that exists on the planet today, where if you're an adventurous mind, you look for these places that are a bit unexplored and a little bit less traveled, especially like you said, everyone and their brothers out doing overland travel these days. And if you fancy yourself as being someone who goes the extra mile, it's no longer just leaving the house to ride down to Ushuaia because everyone's doing that. So I just really wanted to feel like I was out there, and I just wanted to. I felt like it was an expression of me was how I would cross this Darien Gap. I had decisions to make. I could go on a plane, which is the common method, and I've got no problem with that. It seems like a perfectly reasonable way to travel across this piece of land. After I flew home to Canada, halfway through my trip though, being on the plane, it really felt like I was teleporting home to Canada, having ridden all of that distance. I had a window seat, and I remember looking at it and thinking, like, there's so much we're missing. Like, that's the whole of Nicaragua. We just passed it in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And I just felt the same thing about the Darien Gap. I actually came up with the idea while I was on the first half of my trip. I was camping in Central America. I was already in like an uncomfortable mind state. And by the time I got to the bottom of Mexico, I went to stay with a friend, and he had 2 guys that worked for him who were from Venezuela. They crossed the Darien Gap south to north as immigrants from Venezuela trying to make it to Mexico, and they made it through. And they told me the story of their Darien Gap crossing, and it was harrowing. It was like, rotten bodies, and people who they witnessed lose their family, who fell into like a whitewater river, just watching a guy watch his kids get washed away sort of thing. And it's about 150, 200 kilometers through the jungle. Originally, I did want to go through the Darien Gap, but logistically, it's quite difficult going north to south.
It was an idea that I toyed with. I decided not in the end. So I started looking at the yachts. I found out those were discontinued because of new legislation in Colombia. And it's really a bit of a lottery if you do cross the Darien Gap in a small boat going north to south. So if you're entering Colombia, this is a difficult thing to do. And it really depends, I think, on your luck when you reach Colombia. They can say, we do not accept this motorcycle. This is an illegal way to bring a motorcycle to Colombia. It depends on your luck. So I know that a bunch of people have gone in a small boat, like a lancha. I have a friend, Leo, who's doing it right now as we speak. And he's going up the coast in a small boat from Colombia to Panama.
Yeah.
But it seemed like it was very difficult to go the other way. And I think I just mentioned, I'd seen some pictures of the Guna Yala, which is that area of coastline. It's called the Guna Yala, and the Guna tribe who live there. And I'd just seen pictures of these dugout canoes, and they looked sturdy and they looked strong, and the locals were using them to get around. And I saw there were kind of tribal villages along the coast there where this Guna tribe live. And I hadn't even fully considered the idea of taking one of these boats until I said to my friend Jose, I said, I've been thinking about doing it in the dugout canoe. And he just laughed right in my face. like it was like I felt it. He just laughed. And he was like, he just didn't think I could do it. He was just like, don't be so stupid. He wasn't trying to be mean. He just genuinely thought I was joking.
And that sealed the deal. It's happening.
And from that moment on, I remember texting my mate and being like, I'm crossing it in a dugout canoe. Yeah. And there was a bit more of a journey kind of psychologically to actually get towards leaving. I nearly bailed a few times. It felt like the universe was working against me. I thought I had dengue fever 2 days before I left. My phone stopped charging 1 day before I left. And I thought I was going to go back to Panama City. But I did eventually do the hardest bit, which was to leave in the dugout canoe from Puerto Carti, which is on the north coast of Panama. And then I paddled over the course of 21 days. It worked out to be 367 kilometers down the coast of Panama to reach Colombia. And I put the motorbike on a plane. I said, look, the motorbike's causing problems. I'm the main vehicle here. The motorbike's just taking me. You go on a plane, motorbike. I'll see you in Colombia. I'm going to take the canoe. So that was the move.
Wow, jeez, man, what? We're two and 3/4 hours into this, and we've only now are we chatting about that. Why don't we lead with that?
No, but we're into it now.
Jesus, wow. I mean, all the questions are done, mate. So we're free balling it now. But
yeah,
I mean, is there anything else that you want to chat about? Is there any other experiences or anything that you pearls of wisdom you want to give out to people, or anything you want to chat about?
Well, on the Darien Gap trip,
or any of it, anything that you've done, life in general.
Life in general. Yeah, I think that my biggest revelation really has been the how long have you got to live revelation, and thinking about that in terms of, if you're thinking you're going to live for 30 years, you're thinking in too immortal a fashion. And if you're thinking in terms of what am I going to do in the next 30 minutes, that's all fun, but it's too short. And I think this idea of having a month left to live really gives you an idea of the kind of project that would make you most fulfilled in life. Because realistically, any project you can do in 30 days, you could really stretch out and do well out in the next 5 years. Those are the kind of projects, that we should be looking at devoting more of our time to. But I think a lot of people get carried away in this. I mentioned this the other day on the Q&A I did on my Instagram, in this kind of worktopia where all of the rewards in society come from hard work and from dedicating yourself to going to work, earning money, affording things for your family. And while that's all very important, and I don't have there's no golden bullet of how to pull yourself away from that. I do think that realizing that is the situation that we live in, and understanding that at some point it's really important that you do figure out a way to extract yourself from this worktopia is just so critical. to really fully developing who you are as a person. I don't think that people realize how siloed they are. I'm not saying that I'm the all-knowing oracle. I'm just going through a period of figuring out a lot more than I did know previously.
Yeah. But again, it's a very personal thing. This sort of travel and experience that you're experiencing at the moment, and I've done, lots of other people have done, but it's not for everybody. Like there are people out there who are perfectly content. They're perfectly content with the normal life, aren't they? They're perfectly content with Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. They get their kicks doing whatever it is they do, 100% fine. But if you're the type of person where it just feels like there's something missing, something's not quite right there, then this is where your mentality, that's where that comes through, is that, okay, well, figure out what your plan is and go for it. Get it done.
I mean, all respect to those people, my response would be, I think anyone who can give me the same answer for what would you do if you had a month left to live, and what are you doing tomorrow? In my opinion, that is the embodiment of success in life, because that person is living life, the way it should be. Like, that person is
the way they want to do it.
Yeah. And if that person said in the next month, I'd do exactly what I'm doing now, I'd go to work, I'd be with my missus, and I'm not saying that it has to be a big adventure. I think I mentioned that my friend told me he would build a cabin in the woods if he had a month left to live. But I do think that if everyone really thought about what they do in the last month to live, I do think that people would make a lot of changes in the way that they would hopefully live for the next 30 or maybe more years.
Wow. I think we leave it at that, mate. That's a nice place to leave it, I think. It's nice and profound, gives something people to think about, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, mic drop. There you go. Bang.
Isn't it? Yeah, absolutely. Dude, it's been an absolute pleasure. I mean, I'd love to be sat in a bar with you, having a beer and just chatting about just the actual intricate, the little bits that make up the trip. Like it just brings back loads of memories. Just listening to you talk and chatting about stuff, it brings back lots of memories about what life on the road is like. And there's ups and there's downs, but I miss it. I do miss it. I miss it more as time progresses. And I often say this, but I think there's another adventure waiting for sure. We'll see. Dude, where do people go if they want to follow along with you?
So it's just one place at the moment, that is Instagram. So it's Be More Charles. I'm sure it will be somewhere on the screen now.
Links down below.
I just wanted to focus on one output for my efforts for this trip, and you can follow my adventures on there.
Fantastic, awesome. Before we go, is there any shout outs, any plugs, anyone you want to say hello to, anyone you want to tell to F off? Feel free.
Tell Ollie to fuck off. Totally out of context.
Right, there you go. Charles, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on, pal. I'm really looking forward to following the rest of this adventure and seeing what comes your way afterwards. It's going to be exciting times. I get the feeling it's going to be a non-stop adventure for a while. Looking forward to
Bruce. Thanks very much for having me.
All the best to you, mate. You stay safe. Folks, hope you've enjoyed this one. Keep doing your thing. Keep on getting out there. Look after those that you love, but live your life. Woo-ha!